on the 25th of June 2024 by the National Assembly, the loss of lives, maiming and loss of property that has been occasioned following these protests, cognizant that pursuant to Article 115(1) of the Constitution, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya declined to assent to the bill and referred it back to the National Assembly with recommendations to delete all clauses of the bill, acknowledging that the conversation on the finance bill has triggered a broader important public conversation on the question of the high cost of living juxtaposed against the wasteful expenditure in all public institutions, including Parliament. Further acknowledging the issues raised by the youth and other members of the public to do with corruption, impunity, incompetence within state and public appointments, opulent lifestyles of public officials, unemployment and high cost of living, among other issues bedeviling the economy. Now, therefore, the Senate, 1, calls upon the National Assembly to expeditiously consider the presidential memorandum pursuant to Article 115(2)(a). B, all government ministries, departments and agencies and constitutional commissions, including Parliament, to put in place austerity measures in undertaking their respective functions. 3, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and other government multi-sector agencies in the governance, justice, law and order sector to upscale and make concerted efforts to fight corruption. 4, the National Police Service to cease abductions, unlawful arrest, extrajudicial killings, and exercise restraint in dealing with the peaceful and unarmed demonstrators. E, release of all persons arrested for planning and participating in the peaceful demonstrations relating to the enactment of the finance bill. F, the government to waive hospital bills for persons who have been injured and defray funeral expenses for those who lost their lives during the demonstration. And G, the judiciary to prioritize and expedite all court cases relating to the enactment of the finance bill and resultant demonstration. 2, consider all the challenges facing the country and make necessary recommendations to address them. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are gathered here this morning, and I wish to appreciate the fact that before the commencement of the sitting this morning, you led us as a House to, in a minute of silence, reflect and think deeper on the issues that our country faces at this particular moment. And we particularly took time to commiserate and feel the pain and the burden that it is with the families and friends of, as per the count of the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, 39 persons that have so far lost their lives in the last 2 weeks, Mr. Speaker, as we've had these demonstrations. Mr. Speaker, we acknowledge as a House, and I'd wish to go on record about this, that this is an indictment of us as a leadership in this country, that we are in an extremely difficult place where, if we are not careful, not many countries have gotten to this point and turned back. There are some that 20, 30, 50 years are still trying to turn back, actually, after moments such as this. Therefore, this calls for introspection. This calls for a rethink. This calls for serious empathy on our part as a leader. And I have said this many times on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, that the challenges that we face as a country, on many occasions, we have very limited choice. First, in terms of whether to tackle or not, but second and most importantly, on what has been our input as any individual who's in a position of responsibility to get the country to a better space. Therefore, as I begin, Mr. Speaker, I'd wish to personally, and this is at a personal level, not even necessarily as Senator for Kericho, Majority Leader, but just as a leader and somebody who God has granted the opportunity to serve in a position of responsibility in this country, to tender my unreserved apology to the country for either by commission or omission, everything that I have contributed into getting us into the mess and the place that we are in. I have reflected deeply the last few days, Mr. Speaker, and looked through my own journey as an individual and asked myself very serious questions, trying to wear the shoes of the ordinary citizens and how they feel at this particular moment about me as a person. I don't want to focus about any other individual, whichever office they occupy, but just me, a citizen of this country, that God in his own wisdom granted the opportunity to serve in a place of responsibility, and try to retrace my steps. What is it that perhaps I should have done better? I have to be sincere, Mr. Speaker, that there were days in the night that I contemplated even quitting and said, perhaps maybe other people can do it. But this is not the time to quit, because quitting doesn't solve. It doesn't get us out of the hole that you already are in. If it's about getting out and running away, Mr. Speaker, you first sort the mess that you created. I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, that I know that is the agony that many of our colleagues have thought through. And therefore, just to bring the country up to speed and appreciate why the Senate of the Republic of Kenya is seated this morning, is that we had a session yesterday in the afternoon where we sat down as a Senate of the Republic of Kenya off camera, not in this chamber, but seated somewhere together, and reasoned and said, what is it that we can make as our contribution? We are deeply embarrassed, Mr. Speaker, that it has taken young children to point to us that you are naked as our leaders. Extremely troubling. A moment that, to many of the people that I listened to yesterday in the afternoon as leaders shared their experiences and what has been the last few weeks, I realized that we are in extraordinary times, and ordinary solutions that we have proposed in the past cannot work this time. Unless we are serious, unless we are genuine, unless we are honest, unless we mean it, let us not begin this conversation in this house this morning, Mr. Speaker. And I'd wish to put it on record that I come 100% willing and committed, standing before the Senate and the Republic of Kenya, knowing well that one way or the other, I have made a contribution that I am ready to be persuaded and to be led jointly, first of all, by the leaders that are here and by the things that we are being told by the people that are speaking in the public spaces and the conversation that's going on in the country, Mr. Speaker, on what we need to do to redeem and win back our country so that people can reflect back. And therefore, we have come up with this motion, Mr. Speaker. This is just but the beginning of guiding the country towards solutions. And we'd wish to make a certain number of requests to you as our leader, Mr. Speaker, together with the office of the clerk that is here, that as members will be speaking, let it be known that many of them will take time to paint the state of the nation. That's why we have titled this motion, The State of the Nation, as it is, with no filters, with no embarrassments, Mr. Speaker, pointing and saying things as they are, that this is what is wrong, this is what we hear, and spend the remainder or the latter part of their conversation, Mr. Speaker, in proposing solutions. There are those that we can do within us as the Senate. There are those that we can do as a legislature, which is us and the National Assembly. There are things and solutions that we are being asked to make a change at the level of the executive. We will make the recommendation. There are those that constitutionally mandated institutions, Mr. Speaker, have to do And we have to interact with them and guide, Mr. Speaker, how they do it. Because like I have already pointed out, Mr. Speaker, these are not normal times, and normal solutions will not get us out of this problem at this particular time, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, the request that we make to you is that get us staffers of Parliament who will classify, as members speak, all these challenges that you are speaking to and cluster them into the various thematic areas so that we are ready and willing to work whatever time over and above the call of duty, beyond even 6:30, Mr. Speaker, if that is what it will take, because unfortunately, we don't have time. That is the other thing that the young people are telling us. That's the other thing that I hear when I listen to what the country is saying. We are willing and ready to work, Mr. Speaker, so that we classify all these challenges and the various solutions that we are prescribing. Some of them have been suggested by other people outside the precincts of this House. Many others will be shared by these members because there are senior people here, there are people who are experienced, they know what the challenges are, and they know what the contribution can be. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to appreciate the meeting that happened yesterday in the afternoon, where we agreed that not even apportioning blame at this particular time will rescue anybody. When the protesters showed up, Mr. Speaker, in Parliament last week, none of us was spared. And I'd like to say, rightly so. Because much as we may have wished that, deal with the National Assembly, they're the ones who are handling the finance bill, they don't care. They just know that you're leaders. And you're the ones who, by whatever means that is possible, have done this or the other. And therefore we say that as a Senate, as we begin our reflection in the next few days, as we propose solutions, far-reaching implications, answers to questions that we are being asked as a people, in both our private and public spaces, Mr. Speaker. Because this conversation has not spared anybody. And it hasn't taken the traditional definitions or characterizations that we know about issues in this country. Nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with tribe, nothing to do with class, Mr. Speaker. These are unique challenges that have caught over all of us. Mr. Speaker, therefore, we request that when we get our staffers to classify the challenges as they will be enlisted by the various members, say, for example, on the issue of corruption, and this is the proposals that are being made, if our staffers can serve as the rapporteurs, Mr. Speaker, so that later on when we sit to reflect and make our decisions, once we've classified all the issues into the various thematic areas, Mr. Speaker, we will retreat and reconvene as a House, Mr. Speaker, to make the various far-reaching recommendations. Whatever it is that as Parliament we need to do, if it is a change of law, we are willing to do it in record time, Mr. Speaker, and I know we have your cooperation, Mr. Speaker, and you will help us make that. If it is a resolution of the House specific to the various constitutional commissions and independent office holders, Mr. Speaker, we will make a resolution. Because there are two ways in which Parliament makes decisions, Mr. Speaker. We either vote on a bill or we resolve on a matter and give it as a resolution of the House. We intend to pursue whatever means it will take, Mr. Speaker, to heal the country and make us better as we are being challenged in the last few days, Mr. Speaker. The country is complaining of a broken system, Mr. Speaker, that nothing works. Absolutely nothing. That this is a rigged economy where only those with proximity to power and the advantage unduly given to them by the spaces they occupy, either in public or private institutions, Mr. Speaker, are able to enjoy living in the country. And we are being asked to repair and fix it. Where this thing has reached, Mr. Speaker, it needs an overhaul. I am afraid that not the usual glue and gum that we put into areas that are leaking will solve this time. It's completely broken. If it's a pipeline, Mr. Speaker, it is time to decommission and set up a new pipeline. That's what I hear as being challenged. We are being told that everybody wants a fair shot at life and not our children to get better chances at education. Better chances, Mr. Speaker. I grew through our public education systems, from primary to secondary to university, Mr. Speaker. And it was the best at that particular time. People are complaining, Mr. Speaker, that unfortunately, as it is today, nobody with a pen in this country take their children either to public, primary, secondary, or even university, because it's completely finished, Mr. Speaker. The picture of the primary schools that we all went to, Mr. Speaker, while it served and it worked at that particular time, public education is broken at this time. And we must make radical decisions because, Mr. Speaker, that's what they are speaking to. And they are saying, while you guys are okay, what about the kid of the ordinary person? You know, Mr. Speaker, when every time I lost sleep, as I thought through about the issues that we've been through as a country, Mr. Speaker, I asked myself, where is it that we as leaders have lost touch with reality? I didn't grow up as a child of privilege, Mr. Speaker, for your information. I am 38 years old. I came to this parliament at the age of 29. The first 29 years of my life, I spent them in Eastlands, deep in the slums. I have sold sim-sim, like these kids you see on our streets in Ngong Road as you drive, Mr. Speaker, and many times when I see them, I reflect back and I roll down my windows and I share with them because I know that they are complementing what their parents are doing. That's what sends these kids out to the streets. I know what it feels, Mr. Speaker. But why is it that when granted such an opportunity, we are not able to make it better? I believe that an opportunity to serve, Mr. Speaker, and this is what I hear us being told as the leaders, an opportunity to serve is to be reminded that we have issues, but we have looked at you and we think you have the wisdom and the ability to make it work for all of us. Can you go and serve? Go and make it possible for the rest of us to enjoy. But unfortunately, either by design or because that is what the country is accustomed to, Mr. Speaker, when you get the first line at the queue, we don't think about the second and the third onwards, Mr. Speaker. We are satisfied that so long as I've had my serving at the table, that should be enough. That's what people are complaining about, Mr. Speaker. And we are here to plead this morning that grant us the opportunity to lead the country as the Senate of Kenya in making the right and the correct decision so that we don't lose our country. I say this at this particular time, Mr. Speaker, so that people may know that in whatever we say, in whatever we do, anarchy is not an option. I'd wish to plead, even to those that are leading these protests and demonstrations, that if Kenya was to sink, unfortunately, not even them will be spared, Mr. Speaker. And I like the fact that many of the people have begun speaking out and saying that there are certain conditions that you must meet even as a person in some of the solutions that you are prescribing. Because you listen to what is being said in the online spaces, Mr. Speaker, some of the solutions that you can clearly see this will get us into more problems than already we are being unfortunately prescribed on us by people who are not within the borders of Kenya. And that's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker. But like I have said, it's not time to apportion blame and point fingers. It is time to lead the country and point them to the right direction. Because what our young people have done is that they have spectacularly, perhaps painted better than Galileo could ever paint, Mr. Speaker, a picture perfect of the reality of what it means to live in the Republic of Kenya today. Nobody could have done it any better, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it's our duty. We are duty-bound as an institution to lead. Mr. Speaker, corruption has featured prominently in this conversation. In fact, at the heart of it, perhaps finance bill was just but a trigger. But the bigger conversation that the country is having is on the issue of corruption. And what is it that we need to do? We passed the new constitution in 2010, Mr. Speaker, and we thought at that particular time that we had finally succeeded to slay the dragon of corruption, because this is a challenge that as a country we've dealt with the last 60 years or 50, Mr. Speaker. But the question that people are saying is that instead of actually getting better, despite the fact that we have created independent offices, Mr. Speaker, it has become worse. EACC has crafted, and that's a conversation that we will need to have as a House. And eventually, Mr. Speaker, something that we haven't resolved at this point is when we have the thematic areas, shall we resolve them as a committee of the whole? There's a big thinking that says, given the national importance of this conversation, we cannot even relegate it to the committees. There are those that hold a slightly different view, and we will take time to reflect, and I am willing to be persuaded as I listen to my colleagues when they'll be speaking on this issue, Mr. Speaker, whether we deal with it as a committee of the whole. Because we must invite EACC here, Mr. Speaker. And they must tell us, Mr. Speaker, why is it that we are not succeeding? Is it the law? What is it, Mr. Speaker? What do we need to do as a country? Because what we know for sure is that the system has set up, even this design in our counties, Mr. Speaker, of saying you have an ethics and anti-corruption officer at every county, Mr. Speaker. Basically what it takes is that they are quickly captured, Mr. Speaker, and they become appendages of the corrupt system in our various counties, Mr. Speaker. The same can be said nationally. And this issue, Mr. Speaker, if we were to be honest, and I wish that the country also indulges us, is that corruption is not only a problem of leaders. It's a national problem. It's a values problem that we have as a people. We cannot just speak, Mr. Speaker, about what leaders are doing without taking time to consider and say, how do we demonetize our politics, Mr. Speaker? How do we make politics less influenced and infiltrated by the power of money, Mr. Speaker? Because unless and until a country has that conversation, Mr. Speaker, I am afraid we are not likely to win this conversation. And part of the proposal that must come out of here, Mr. Speaker, is the process of removing money out of our politics, Mr. Speaker. That has destroyed the fabric of our society. And I like the fact that listening to the president the other day, he said, and this is something that, a conversation that many of us have had many times, that even this issue of Harambee is the way it's being done, Mr. Speaker, this presentation of resources, Mr. Speaker, that perhaps it's time to ban it from us as public officials, so that when I go before people, I tell them about policies that I have made to make their life better, not the 2 million shillings that I'm carrying in my car to give them to build a classroom for them, Mr. Speaker. That's a challenge that we must be willing to accept. Because, Mr. Speaker, until, and I must repeat, until we demonetize our politics, Mr. Speaker, and the space of influence, it will continue to be a gold rush and the desire, Mr. Speaker, on every member. You know, people don't know that the cycle of and the life of a politician in this country, it involves running Monday to Thursday, collecting as much as you can, only to go and spend it on Friday to Sunday. And in fact, most of that money, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't even get to the houses of these members. People don't know. If a member makes perhaps $1 million within a week, they'll be very lucky if 100,000 makes it to do anything in their house. 900 of that money goes back to the constituency. Therefore, we must remove that demand and this desire to see members of parliament and politicians and people who are in public offices, Mr. Speaker, as if they are tools for pushing resources and money. Until we do that, but that's just the effect. What we need to address here today is a structural fight, and those that are in the justice and, Mr. Speaker, law and order society, that they must come here and we must reveal to each other and tell each other, why is it difficult? EACC must appear before us, Mr. Speaker, and they must tell us this is what we need to do, so that we know, Mr. Speaker, why is it we are now in the third cycle of county governments, Mr. Speaker? Everybody knows why people can almost kill each other to be county governors, Mr. Speaker. But we don't have a solid case, not one, before any courts of law that can point out and say, this is what we have done as an institution, so that people know this is what we are doing. We will be willing, Mr. Speaker, because this has featured prominently. We are being even challenged, Mr. Speaker, as an institution on the things that we have done and said and the laws that we have passed. We must make it difficult. It must pain people, Mr. Speaker, to break the system after we repair it. It must, the punishment must be punitive, Mr. Speaker, so that it gets to a point where people fear. You know, people don't fear to be corrupt in this country because they know what is the worst that will happen. I will be taken to court, I will pay a bail, and I will walk scot-free. Chances are I'll enjoy that money until I die. EACC must come to us, Mr. Speaker, and tell us even this new jurisprudence that they are trying to establish, where somebody steals $1 billion, then says, I am willing to part with 300 million, and we remove the case. Unless we didn't read properly. But good leaders have said, this is not the time to apportion blame. If there are things that they want us to change, is it their budget? Is it the law as we defined it, Mr. Speaker? Let us listen with an open mind and say, tell us what it is that will respond to this particular issue. Mr. Speaker, the judiciary also has been very silent while all this has been going. In fact, the only thing I've seen the Chief Justice speak about was on the issue of abductions, and I think later on, when her chambers were raided, she issued a statement or something to that effect. But listening into what we are being told and the conversation going around, part of the broken system is our judicial system, Mr. Speaker. People know, Mr. Speaker, that even if you're taken to court, you can find your way around it, Mr. Speaker, that you can buy justice. A country that sells its justice, Mr. Speaker, is not a country. If I know that all it takes for me to get away with murder, Mr. Speaker, is sufficient resources in my bank account, then that is not a country. Judicial Service Commission, Mr. Speaker, just like us and all of us that are in positions of responsibility, Mr. Speaker, must engage and be willing to guide us and say this is what has happened. If you listen, as people who are speaking, people have shared their experiences, how they have been disinherited of properties that were left by their parents because a rich person showed up, Mr. Speaker, and as orphaned children, they could not put up a fight before our courts of law. That is not the foundation of a judicial system, Mr. Speaker. And we need time to reflect. JSC must tell us, what is it that we need to do, Mr. Speaker? Equal opportunities has featured prominently. Many people are saying, we know that all it will take for you to get an employment anywhere is to have people of influence. We have constitutionally mandated institutions, Mr. Speaker, NCIC, and so many others. Let's see the studies that they have done so far out of the millions that we have sent to them over the years. Are they just collecting per diems and traveling to Naivasha? Or they have done a scientific study that can help us to appreciate? You know, the problem in this country, Mr. Speaker, is that people love proposing half solutions. And that's what we are being told, that that is not enough. It is not just enough to tell us that this community has this percentage of jobs, this one's has the other. Can you make recommendations? And we are willing to come and pass a resolution of the House, Mr. Speaker. If it is established, Mr. Speaker, that the community that I come from has more than an equal share of opportunities, Mr. Speaker, in the various cadres and levels of government, Mr. Speaker, let's pass a resolution here and say that until such a time that others get an opportunity equitably, Mr. Speaker, we don't give chance to those because, but unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, listening and reading the reports that have come from NCIC, it is so basic and it's like the person who designed it just wanted to appease people with little facts here and there, Mr. Speaker. Oh, Kikuyus have this percentage, Luos have the other. That's not enough. Break it down. Work like a serious institution. Tell us how many CEOs exist in public service. Give us their distribution. How many senior level managers exist? How many are ordinary clerks, Mr. Speaker? We could be talking about a particular community that has a certain share, Mr. Speaker, but they are all clerks and drivers. It's not the same. We need a more detailed study so that you lead us as a house into making this conversation. I'm trying to rush, Mr. Speaker, because I know time is not on our side. Governance on our value systems, Mr. Speaker, featured prominently in this conversation. And we must put it either by law, by design. What is it that you do as a public official when certain things are said about you? How is it, Mr. Speaker, that in certain countries, that you as a public officials, even when you're just accused of having an extramarital affair, forget about stealing public resources. The system is so advanced that you are challenged and are told, Mr. XYZ, if you cannot be faithful even to your partner, you cannot be faithful to your current, to the country, that your character has been found wanting. And people are asked to step aside on such occasions, and people do the honorable thing and say, I think I no longer enjoy the trust of the people. Allow me to pursue other things. On personal matters, I'm not talking about public issues, Mr. Speaker. The problem with us is even when we have been challenged on public issues, Mr. Speaker, we still want to stick and die until, you know, the famous quote that somebody once said, "I'd rather die than resign." On debt, Mr. Speaker, I have a certain level of reprieve as a person, but it still doesn't help me. Like I said, these young people don't care, and the people that are speaking don't care, because on the two occasions that the debt question appeared before this House the last term, I voted against it, both to move it at 6 trillion and eventually when we moved it to 10 trillion, Mr. Speaker. But that doesn't help. That's history. We can point fingers and say you moved, you did this or the other. It doesn't matter at this point. The thing we are being told first, Mr. Speaker, is that when Kenyans look keenly, they are trying to locate 10 trillion in the country, and they cannot see it. So they're asking, are you sure, first of all, that we owe 10 trillion? And I have made public confessions, Mr. Speaker. Those that served with us in the Budget and Finance Committee last time, Mr. Speaker, know that when we asked for Kenya's debt register, it was brought to us on an Excel sheet. No records beyond that. And you're being told, company this, you owe them this much, this is the rate at which you borrowed, and so on and so forth. It pointed out to a problem. In fact, on the day that I made my contribution and said that I reject this approval of the debt, raising of the debt ceiling to 10 trillion, that's part of the reasons that I raised that afternoon, Mr. Speaker. And I said, until Parliament has a counter copy of what the Treasury is borrowing, Mr. Speaker, and we rearrange that whole space of our debt, Mr. Speaker, we are not yet out of the woods. Therefore, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the issue of debt, Mr. Speaker, but we are being told that a public audit of our debt situation, Mr. Speaker, is mandatory at this particular point. And I know the executive will do theirs, but even us as Parliament, because it's us who failed in that regard, we must carry out our own, so that we counter-check with what the executive is doing. Parliamentary Budget Office can lead this exercise, but if they need the expertise of other audit firms, including international, reputable, established institutions that can help us in this conversation, people who know about multilateral lending, Mr. Speaker, and going to the financial markets, because there are issues of Eurobond therein and other institutions that we have borrowed from, Mr. Speaker, let us have that conversation so that we know, first of all, Mr. Speaker, what is our debt exposure. Look at even the debt ceiling change of law that we did earlier. Makes sense. We argued and said we want to change how we calculate our debt status, Mr. Speaker, as opposed to having it as a static number, make it as a percentage of the GDP, because that's a more globally accepted standard. And that's fine. And I supported that motion, Mr. Speaker. And we said in 3 years' time, we want to bring our debt sustainability to 55% of the GDP. It is now at 61. We have 3 years. But what is the plan, Mr. Speaker? What did we learn from the past? How comes when you were passing that particular legislation, we didn't tie it so neatly so that we know? You know, bringing debt as a percentage to the GDP to 55% is not an occurrence, Mr. Speaker. It's not an event. It's a process. You have to grow down your fiscal deficit over the years. We didn't put it in law, Mr. Speaker. And it's not just enough for us to be satisfied and say that we have a promise that in 3 years' time, that's where we'll be. At the time of exiting this conversation, Mr. Speaker, we must tighten that law so that even as those that do our budget at the Treasury know that the maximum fiscal deficit that we can get for this year, 2024-2025, is this one. And you tighten it so that by you leave them with no option. So that by 2027, Mr. Speaker, when you're supposed to be at 55%, they have no option but to get there. But if we leave the law as it is, I can tell you for a fact that we will get to 2027, we will still be at 60, Mr. Speaker, or even more if we don't change. And we must make a decision, Mr. Speaker, as we sit and reflect, because debt has featured prominently in this conversation. As I move to conclude, Mr. Speaker, SRC, Salaries and Remuneration Commission, have been silent. as this whole debate has been raging. Silence is not an option anymore, Mr. Speaker. They have to speak to the country. They have to tell us what is it that you're going to do so that we reduce our public expenditure on wages and salaries from 46% to the mandatory 35%, Mr. Speaker. If it means taking a pay cut, we as members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, good people, we have been told that it's not possible, that members of parliament will never do it. We don't have an option. We must do it, Mr. Speaker. The yearly increment that is now being discussed, that we are being told that, I saw that being reported or misreported in sections of the media, that we are now going to earn more. SRC continues to be silent about it, but we must make a resolution and say we reject even that one in light of the financial situation. But as it is, Mr. Speaker, as it is, Mr. Speaker, even if the high earners were to take a shave on their salary, that is still not enough. I don't have the statistics, and that's why I've said some of these constitutional commissions have failed us, Mr. Speaker. I don't know what will be the percentage of Kenyans say that earn over and above 100 and 150. But I'm certain, Mr. Speaker, they are in the slim minority of less than 10%. 90% of our public officers earn less than 100,000 and below, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, whatever savings that we can make there, let us make, but over and above, the thing that people don't like, Mr. Speaker. And this featured prominently. Senator Omogeni is out, but he knows this featured prominently in our NADCO talks. And a report that we tabled here, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, which we haven't done with speed, Mr. Speaker, captured all the wastages that are in the public expenditure space and what we need to do as a country. From page 546 of the NADCO report, I think, to almost page 600, Mr. Speaker. Where things that we understand, things are tight. It's the most obvious thing that people do. Young people are telling us, when you have a job with Safaricom, you can live in Langata. But the day you lose that job, you move downwards to either to South B or Umoja until things get better. That's what we are not able to do as the leadership. We know for a fact that when things were better, we could all fly business as members of parliament. But if you read the recommendation from NADCO, we have said any flight that is less than 3 to 4 hours, surely, must you fly business as a public official? 3 hours. You will not even sleep. You know? And so many things, Mr. Speaker, recurrent expenditure and wastages. Institutions, even parliament. And you know, I saw our staff criticize us and say, yes, we have been saying this or the other. But even our staffers, they need to know that this must come to them. You know, I've served as staff welfare chair, so I know a thing or two about expenditure in this institution. You will hardly get anybody in parliament, Mr. Speaker, on a Friday. Even to consider a report on something that happened in parliament, Mr. Speaker, people cannot consider it in parliament. It must be considered in Naivasha or Mombasa. As is the case in all our public institutions, we must lead by example, Mr. Speaker. And before we exit out of this motion today, we must give a blow-by-blow detail and say, what is it? What happens? Why is it that people cannot think in public offices on Fridays? That there must be somewhere in Naivasha, there must be somewhere in Kisumu, there must be elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, I don't think that there is any correlation between better consideration of a tender document or evaluation exercise that comes when you leave Nairobi, Mr. Speaker. These are extraordinary times, Mr. Speaker, and I must appreciate that there has been guidance, Mr. Speaker, and we are being reminded that because the finance bill has now been sent back via presidential memorandum and all clauses have been deleted. You know, that's a space that many people misunderstand. And sometimes we need to help people also appreciate parliamentary procedures. Number one, finance bill remains to be a bill. It's not an act of parliament, like many people have seen misreported in public spaces and says, oh, it takes effect on such and such a day. But as a sign of goodwill and trust, because trust has been completely eroded at this time, Mr. Speaker, I think the worst thing to do is for the National Assembly to come the Budget and Finance Committee considers that recommendation immediately, Mr. Speaker, so that people are satisfied that that is behind us. But having done that, of more importance, the National Treasury must table the new budget estimates that captures, Mr. Speaker, the new reality. Less 3.9 trillion, less the 346 that was lost. And people must take a cut. In fact, my proposal, Mr. Speaker, it's a very simple exercise. 346 out of 3.9 trillion budget, Mr. Speaker, is 9%. At least at the national level, because I wouldn't wish that the same be applied to our counties. For counties, it must be on equity basis, Mr. Speaker. But on government, national government institutions, just do a pro rata cut. If your budget was 300 billion, Mr. Speaker, as a state department or an agency, you submit your new estimates less than 9%, so that you are left to go and do the reappropriation of whatever needs to be done. And by next week, Mr. Speaker, we have a new budget that captures that particular reality, because, like we are being reminded, living within our means is not an option anymore. And I believe that when our colleagues reconvene in the National Assembly, they'll be guiding us in that particular. But I have to be specific and say, because in the first instance, the distribution to counties was not pro rata, then the shave, I don't know what is being proposed, and we will wish to be reasoned, but it cannot be pro rata to counties, Mr. Speaker. We must, at the very least, I know it's not in my place, but at the very least, Mr. Speaker, counties should not get less than what they got last year. At the very least, Mr. Speaker. I know it's difficult, but somehow, somewhere, we must protect. Though, members, I don't know if you follow this conversation, even in our own county level, people have become more critical in budget-making process. And they are beginning to ask our county governors, can you lay out your budget in public? So that we see also, where is your confidential vote, like there was. You know, there are many budget lines that people don't follow. But now people are becoming more alive to reality of the budget-making process in our counties. And we'll speak later. I'm sure when colleagues speak, they will get time. I cannot say everything. To say on also the architecture of devolution, whether as is presently moving, Mr. Speaker, whether it can work. You know, Mr. Speaker, you are governor. Between 2013 and 2017, many young people, women, and the vulnerable made a life out of doing business with counties. And there was spread of resources within, you know, in every village, you could see a young person and you'd be told so and so, he's a road contractor, he supplies this and the other, he trades with the county, and therefore people could begin to appreciate. These are things that were completely unknown to the country before the promulgation of a new constitution. Post-2017, there are no such people in our villages, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I have said on the floor of this house many times that unless the governor is your personal friend, or sometimes even unless he's your father, nobody can dare supply to our counties anymore. Nobody can dare trade with them. As protectors and custodians of devolution, Mr. Speaker, the House charged with the responsibility to make sure that devolution works in our county. Before we exit this motion, we must propose a way forward. If it means forcing our governors to first clear all the pending bills that have been found to be eligible, Mr. Speaker, before rolling out any new development, so that you give life at least to the many women and young people, Mr. Speaker, that have lost whatever little savings that they had by trading with counties, Mr. Speaker, we must pass that particular resolution today, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of police, I just want to speak to two final issues, then I conclude. I once said in a public forum, I was asking, where is the IG? That was in relation to the killings that were going on in Kerio Valley. It's been 2 weeks of protests, Mr. Speaker. Kenyans have lost their lives. Others have been beaten. There have been challenges. Police have faced also very difficult and hostile gangs on the streets. I am yet to hear the voice of the Inspector General. I am deeply troubled by that, Mr. Speaker. It cannot be right. We were in this country, though I was not a leader and I was a young person in university, Mr. Speaker, when we faced the post-election violence, day by day, General Hussein Mohammed will brief the country and speak to the country and give them an update of what is happening. How can we face such a crisis, Mr. Speaker? Up to this particular point, I don't know what the Inspector General thinks. I don't know what is the challenge. We don't know these things that are being discussed. Mr. Speaker, the question at the back of my mind, is this really the right man for this job? Mr. Speaker, we must think critically, finally, about Article 37. We have had conversations and debates here on this House, were the demonstrations peaceful or not. How is it that we continue to struggle as a country with this thing of peaceful demonstrations? What is it that we are supposed to do? Can't we guide and provide the way forward so that people can know that if I want to peacefully demonstrate as expected of me, under rights guaranteed under my constitution, what is it that we are supposed to do? Because a new trend is emerging, and we have seen this, Mr. Speaker, where any time when you organize a demonstration, infiltration and separating between those that are peacefully protesting, Mr. Speaker, and those that want to take advantage of the environment and the climate that has been created is difficult to distinguish. And I'd wish to request the House that we don't exit on this motion until first we provide the way forward and guidance. I listened, for example, Mr. Speaker, to one gentleman, one of the organizers of the Occupy Parliament crusade, and he said, according to them, they just wanted to come and sit outside here and listen and make noise as the debate on the finance bill was ongoing. And I said, okay, fair enough. But unfortunately, in the way that they communicated, it was impossible to tell how to do that kind of an occupation. I wish, Mr. Speaker, at that point, that there had been an engagement, either with your office, because you're the person who permits this kind of engagements, so that we know how is it that if today there are 100,000 people who want to come and present a public petition to Parliament, we should be able to facilitate it, so that they know what time they'll come, what they want to do, so that we set the rules and agree, and people know. And we don't provide an environment or a climate that is right for people with sinister motives, Mr. Speaker. I know for a fact that it was not the design of the young people that wanted to protest outside Parliament for Parliament to look like it looks this afternoon. They had no intention of banning anything. I don't think it was in their design to destroy the amount of property that has been destroyed here. I don't think it was in their design, Mr. Speaker, for members to flee for their life. They wanted to come and present a petition. Therefore, we have to think and propose as a way forward of how is it that we can guarantee every citizen how we protect their rights, because there are two inherent dangers, Mr. Speaker. If we don't provide a way forward and a way out of this particular conversation, then it shall be known forever, Mr. Speaker, that it is impossible to have a peaceful protest in this country, yet other countries have it. When we travel, even, anyway, I don't want to get into a diplomatic challenge by mentioning various countries, Mr. Speaker, but there are countries that you think even are less democratic, but they have provided the space and the means for people to exercise their democratic right, on the right to peaceful protest, Mr. Speaker, and it's provided for, and people make their voice heard. I don't know how we can do it. I know colleague members can guide us on how this is done, but the long and short of this conversation, Mr. Speaker, is that we are sick, and the ordinary medicine that we have administered over the years is not likely to heal us. We need new medication, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, with those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and request the leader of minority, Senator Justice Retired Stewart Madzayo, to second this motion, Mr. Speaker, and lead the country towards the right path. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Asante, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, cha kwanza ningependa kuunga mkono hoja hii. Mswada huu naunga mkono kwa sababu unakuja katika wakati unaofaa. Bwana Spika, nasimama hivi leo hapa ndani ya bunge la Senate nikiwa na majonzi makubwa sana. Tukiwa na majonzi sisi kama bunge la Senate kwa sababu hivi sasa Kenya imeweza kupoteza maisha ya watoto wa Kenya 39. Na vile vile tukiangalia katika mahospitali yetu yote katika Kenya, kuanzia sekta zote katika Kenya, kama ni kuanzia baharini mpaka Lake Victoria, kuanzia ukumbi wa magharibi mpaka mashariki, Kenya nzima katika kila mahospitali kuna watu ambao wameketi huko sasa, nambari 361, ambao wameweza kufanyiwa matibabu. Wengine wamekatwa maguu, wengine wamekatwa mikono, wengine wamefanyiwa operation za tumbo, vichwa. Hivi sasa wako na majanga ya maumivu wakiwa wamelala katika hizo hospitali. Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha sisi kama bunge tukiwa hapa kuona kwamba nchi yetu inaenda njia ambayo sio, na kunao muhimu zaidi kuweza kuona ya kwamba tumeweza kuregesha nchi imeenda katika njia inayofaa. Bwana Spika, kitu cha kwanza, tuko na vijana katika Kenya ambao ni vijana wadogo, vijana mabarobaro ambao wao ni Gen Z. Hao vijana mabarobaro, Bwana Spika, wamekuja barabarani, wamekuja kwenye maandamano wakiwa wao wako na chupa za maji wameshika katika mkono wao wa kushoto, na upande wa kulia wameshika simu, ili kuweza kurekodi ile historia ambao wamekuja barabarani wakifanya maandamano wakidai haki za kila Mkenya ziweze kutendeka. Bwana Spika, hawa vijana wa Gen Z hawana ukabila, hawana ujamaa, hawana undugu. Wao wanajuana kama Wakenya. Wao wanajuana kama Wakenya ambao ni ndugu moja, ni watu wanaishi pamoja, ni watu nchi yao ni hii Kenya, na hata Kenya ikiharibika hawana nchi nyingine ambao watakimbilia. Kwa hiyo wamekuja kutengeza historia na kurekodi historia kwa sababu wanadai haki zao. Bwana Spika, jambo la kusikitisha, tunaona ya kwamba polisi ambao ni utumishi kwa wote wakiongozwa na Inspector General Kome walitumia nguvu kupita kiasi kuweza kusimamisha maandamano haya ambayo yalisababisha vifo, ambayo yalisababisha watu kuumia. Hivi sasa tunavyoongea kuna watu pengine wamekatwa miguu, wamekatwa mikono, tumbo zao hazijulikani kama watapona namna gani. Na kufikia sasa, Bwana Spika, ni jambo la kusikitisha. Na mimi nataka kusema ya kwamba wazee wote, wakina mama, poleni sana. Sisi kama bunge la Senate tuko pamoja na nyinyi katika barabara hii, na tunaendelea kusupport hao vijana kwa sababu ya kwamba maandamano yao yako katika sheria na yako ndani ya katiba. Bwana Spika, nataka kusema ya kwamba inajulikana kiwazi sababu ya haya maandamano. Bwana Spika, sababu ya haya maandamano yaliletwa kwa sababu ya ile bili ama ule mswada wa fedha. Mswada wa fedha ulikuwa na mahesabu ambayo yalikuwa si sawa. Yalikuwa yanaweza kutoza ushuru wananchi ambao umepita kiasi. Bwana Spika, tunajua ya kwamba ushuru ni haki ya kila mwananchi aweze kulipa, lakini ushuru ukipita kiasi ama mambo ambayo hayafai kutozwa ushuru yakiwekwa hapo, ni lazima watu waweze kuandamana ili kupata haki yao. Bwana Spika, tunaona kabisa ya kwamba hii bili ya fedha ama huu mswada wa fedha uliweza kuleta mushkili mkubwa sana ndani ya nchi yetu ya Kenya, na sisi hatuwezi kulaumu wale vijana wa Gen Z kwa sababu walipokuja walisema ya kwamba mswada huu unagandamiza kila mwananchi. Haugandamizi tajiri peke yake, haugandamizi maskini peke yake, bali unagandamiza kila mtu katika nchi. Bwana Spika, sisi kama viongozi tunasema ya kwamba ni lazima tuwe na nidhamu. Tuwe na nidhamu kwa sababu Bwana Spika, tunaona ya kwamba hivi wananchi wanavyoendelea kuishi, hawaishi katika maisha mema. Maisha yamekuwa ghali na kila kitu katika Kenya kimekuwa hakiwezi kupatikana kirahisi. Jambo ambalo nataka kusema zaidi ni kwamba kumezuka ile sehemu ya watu kuwa na majivuno. Wale watu ambao wanajivunia sana ni wale watu ambao wanafanya ufisadi. Bwana Spika, tumeona katika harakati za wale wa Kenya ambao juzi jana tulikuwa pamoja. Hivi leo watu hawajamaliza miaka miwili ndani ya hili bunge. Tunaona ya kwamba watu maisha yao yamegeuka. Wamekuwa matajiri zaidi ya vile inatakikana. Bwana Spika, utajiri huu ambao unaupata kigafla, kama ambao umechukua ndege unaruka juu unakuwa tajiri mara moja na dakika 45 unashuka chini umefika Mombasa, ni hali ya aibu. Na mambo kama haya ambayo tunaonyeshana, mambo ya kusikitisha. Kenya yetu inataka iwe na amani. Wako watu wanaishi. Tuliona hata yule balozi wa Uingereza alisema sasa watu wamekuja hivi karibuni walikuwa hawana kitu, sasa wamekuwa matajiri mpaka wanatutapikia. Hii ndio tunaona ya kwamba Gen Z wanasema hii aibu kama hii isitendeke katika nchi yetu. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, sisi tunasema tu ya kwamba vile ambavyo rais aliweza kukataa kusaini na akaregesha, ni kwamba huo ulikuwa mwelekeo wa kisawasawa. Nataka kusema ya kwamba wale ambao wamepoteza maisha yao, Bwana Spika, waweze kupewa na waweze kwa serikali iweze kuangalia kwa wale wote ambao walikuwa wamepatikana hasara hiyo katika maandamano haya. Bwana Spika, sisi kama bunge la Senate tuko tayari wakati wote. Hawa Gen Z wakiwa wanataka kutuona sisi kama bunge la Senate, tuko tayari. Wao waseme ni wapi na mahali gani, sisi tuko tayari, tunaweza kuketi nao. Hakuna wakati bunge letu hili la Senate limeahirishwa kwa sababu hatutaki kuonana na wananchi. Hapana. Hata wakati wa vita, mabunge yote katika ulimwengu huwa yanabaki yakisikiza wananchi, kwa sababu mabunge ndio yanaweza kutekeleza mwelekeo wa taifa. Na hivi sasa sisi tuko tayari. Tunasema poleni sana kwa wale ambao walipatikana katika hii hasara ya maandamano, na kwa wale vijana wote Gen Z, bunge la Senate liko wazi. Wakati wowote wakitaka kuonana na sisi kama bunge la Senate tuko tayari kukutana nao. Bwana Spika, la mwisho nataka kusema ya kwamba kwa sababu nimetangulia kusema kwamba kuna watu ambao hivi sasa wamelala katika mochari ambao ni 39 katika ile ratiba ya hesabu, na pia kunaweza kuwa pengine kuna wengine zaidi katika pande zote za Kenya mbalimbali, na wale ambao wameumia. Tunasema kwamba wale mapolisi ambao walitumia nguvu zao, walitumia bunduki badala ya kutumia ile bunduki ambao unatupa kile kikebe cha kutoa machozi, waliweza kutumia bunduki zile ambazo ziko na risasi na kupiga hawa wananchi ambao walifariki. Tunasema ya kwamba hao polisi hatua lazima ichukuliwe na washikwe, waweze kupelekwa kotini, wachajiwe na makosa ya kutumia bunduki ama kutumia nguvu zaidi na kuumiza wananchi ama kupoteza maisha yao. Kitu cha pili, nataka kusema kwamba wale wote ambao wameshikwa wako ndani hivi sasa, wameshikwa kiholela, aidha kutolewa katika gari kama vile tuliona yule mbunge wa zamani alivyotolewa. Tunasema ya kwamba wale wote ambao hivi sasa wamewekwa ndani korokoroni kwa makosa haya ya kuandamana tu, tunasema ya kwamba hao watu wawachiliwe mara moja. Nataka kuuliza rais ambaye ana uwezo yeye kama rais na aliyeweza kuandika hawa watu katika serikali yake, kuna watu wako na record za ufisadi, kuna watu wamefanya vitendo ambavyo havifai kulingana na sheria za Kenya, ile tunaita katika criminal acts. Ikiwa hao watu wako katika serikali yako, afadhali awachishe kazi mara moja. Vile vile tunasema ya kwamba jambo lingine ni kwamba ile bili ya IEBC hivi sasa ambayo iko kwenye mikono yake, iko katika mikono ya rais, ako nayo, kuondoa hili vuguvugu la kwamba hutaki kusaini ama huwezi kusaini ama kuna tashwishi yoyote. Wananchi hivi sasa wanataka hiyo IEBC iwekwe ndani, ikuwe sheria mara moja, ili mambo ya Kenya yaweze kuendelea kulikana na uchaguzi katika yale maeneo ambayo hayana wabunge ama hayana wale watu wanaowakilisha. Kwa hiyo aiweke kidole mara moja. Kuna wale walimu wa JSS na wale madaktari ambao wanamaliza, ambao wamepita mitihani yao, hawa ni lazima waandikwe mara moja. Na mwisho pia ile program ambayo ilikuwa inasaidia watoto wa watu wasiojiweza maskini kama school feeding program, hiyo iregeshwe mara moja ili watoto waweze kuenda skuli wakijua watapata chakula. La mwisho, lakini la mwisho na muhimu zaidi, ni kwamba sisi kama wabunge wa Senate, nakubaliana na alivyosema kiongozi walio wengi, vile watu wanasema kwamba ati mishahara inaongezwa. Bwana Spika, mimi nasema kwamba sitaki mshahara wangu uongezwe. Bao ilikuwa sisi tupewe kama wabunge wa Senate, na najua ndugu zangu maseneta wako hapa, tuna shida za pesa ndio, lakini nina hakika watakubaliana na mimi ya kwamba si wakati mzuri sasa sisi kuongezwa mishahara. Haifai, hatuitaki, tumekataa. Ndugu yangu Hadwale, utakubaliana na mimi ya kwamba ushakula chumvi ya kutosha. Mshahara hivi sasa ukae kando, wapewe wale ambao hawajiwezi, ili waweze kuendelea na maisha yao sawa sawa. Ama ile pesa ambayo ingepewa katika mishahara ipelekwe kwa hawa ambao walipata majeruhi, wale ambao wamefariki, wale ambao wako na shida zao, ziende huko ili ziweze kuwasaidia. Bwana Spika, huu ni mswada ambao uko na maana sana, na sisi tunajua, tunaita uwiano, tunajua sote ni wa Kenya. Kenya ikiharibika itakuwa ni nchi yetu, hatuna nchi nyingine ya kwenda isipokuwa kubaki hapa ndani ya Kenya. Kwa hiyo tunatakiana kila laheri kuona kwamba serikali yetu na watu wetu wa Kenya tumekaa pamoja kama ndugu moja, tuwe na amani, tupendane, tuweze kuregesha nchi yetu katika njia ya amani na mwelekeo. Asante sana Bwana Spika, naunga mkono.
Honorable Senators, I will now proceed to propose the question. Recognizing the state of the nation at this moment, the ongoing protests following the passing of the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bills number 30 of 2024, on the 25th of June 2024 by the National Assembly, the loss of lives, maiming and loss of property that has been occasioned following these protests, cognizant that pursuant to Article 115(1)(b) of the Constitution, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya declined to assent to the bill and referred it back to the National Assembly with a recommendation to delete all clauses of the bill, acknowledging that the conversation on the Finance Bill has triggered the broader important public conversation on the question of the high cost of living, juxtaposed against the wasteful expenditure in all public institutions, including Parliament. Further, acknowledging the issues raised by the youth and other members of public to do with corruption, impunity, incompetence within state and public appointments, opulence, lifestyles of public officers, unemployment and high cost of living, amongst other issues bedeviling the economy. Now, therefore, the Senate calls upon, 1, the National Assembly to expeditiously consider the Presidential Memorandum pursuant to Article 115(2)(a), 2, all government ministries, departments and agencies and constitutional commissions, including Parliament, to put in place austerity measures in undertaking their respective functions. 3, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and other government multi-sector agencies in the governance, justice, law and order sector to upscale and make concerted effort to fight corruption. And 4, the National Police Service to seize abductions, unlawful arrests, extrajudicial killings, and exercise restraint in dealing with peaceful and unarmed demonstrators. 5, release of all persons arrested for planning and participating in peaceful demonstrations relating to the enactment of the Finance Bill. 6, the government to waive hospital bills for persons who have been injured and defray funeral expenses for those who lost their lives during the demonstrations. And 7, the judiciary to prioritize and expedite all court cases relating to the enactment of the Finance Bill and the resultant demonstrations. 2, considers all the challenges facing the country and makes necessary recommendations to address them. Now the floor is open. I call upon Senator Boni of Kakamega to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, accept my compliments for allowing us to reserve time and place for this very important motion. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to equally compliment the leader of the majority and the leader of my minority for speaking not just from their minds, but especially from their hearts. I never thought in my life that in this House I would listen to the wonderful speech by the young Senator Aaron Cheruiyot. We have been trying to steer this Parliament in that direction, and some people wanted to read defiance. No. Listen to the words of the leader of the minority. He is telling the Gen Z that at no time in this parliament have we ever locked anybody from accessing us. They didn't have to lose lives, lose limbs, result in loss of property for them to have an opportunity for a photo session in this house. Every day, the Speaker's Gallery and the public gallery has not only remained open, but it always has people. In fact, there are times, Mr. Speaker, when we are not sitting, the Sergeant at Arms allows people to come and sit in these benches. We didn't have to pay this price. Mr. Speaker, I therefore want to open my remarks by passing my profound, heartfelt condolences to all Kenyans who lost their lives, who were injured, and whose property was destroyed. Mr. Speaker, I specifically missed to sit in this house on Wednesday last week when I should have, because a woman who has been selling me fried groundnuts and oranges in Kakamega, Caroline Shiramba, was shot dead. She sells outside the office of the governor. Mr. Speaker, equally here in Nairobi, a young man from Marinya was shot dead. So these things have come very close. And for those who thought that this was something for a particular set of Kenyans, when I went to visit the victims at the General Hospital in Kakamega, one of the victims was the son of one of my chiefs. He was at the forefront in Kakamega. You saw even the son of the Attorney General of Kenya was also involved. I saw the son of Honorable my brother Junjuri was involved. I particularly don't know where my children were. Probably they were also involved. The only thing that missed was that they were not captured on camera. Mr. Speaker, where are we? 4 things that are unprecedented have taken place. The first one is that for the first time in the history of this country, the president refused to assent to the finance bill. It is unprecedented. 2, Mr. Speaker, the youth did what they did. Some people call it inversion of parliament. Others call it desegregation of parliament. I don't know what to call it. I can only say they did what they did. Mr. Speaker, never in the history of the 4 presidents we have had in this country have they ever contemplated on deploying the military the way we did. Mr. Speaker, finally, you saw across the whole country members of the public torching homes and properties of elected leaders. We are indeed in a bad place, and therefore, as we say in our community, when you are mourning, you don't mourn with shame. We must speak to it, as I wish to do now. Mr. Speaker, we are where we are today because Kenyans hate and are angry with the ongoings in the country. And if we don't speak to them and take action, we will go nowhere. It was never the finance bill. It was simply that the finance bill was a trigger Why? Because public servants, led by ministers, are very, Mr. Speaker, corrupt. And people hate this, and people are angry. Yesterday, colleagues, I was called by a minister whose name I don't wish to bring on the floor because it's not necessary. And he was very angry with me for the position that I have taken, especially over the weekend in Nabaholo, over corruption in the cabinet. He told me very many strong and bad things. Because people who the other day we were working with here want to think because the Constitution has given them a different office as opposed to the offices as ourselves we have been given, they are therefore in high heaven, they should be worshipped. Nobody should mention their name, even when they are wrong. Mr. Speaker, people are angry and hate public servants because of our own making. The public display of wealth and opulence, unless members of the public can quickly see where you've gotten it, they will not be happy. Over the weekend, I was speaking of a young member of parliament from my community who has bought a helicopter. And I know him very well. I wish him well to continue accumulating wealth. I wish him well to continue accumulating wealth. But please, I'm asking the president to ask himself, how can the membership of an MP to a committee of parliament be the basis for him to be able to afford some of the things that are not affordable? Honorable Didmus Barasa, take it easy. Those helicopters will not change your life. Mr. Speaker, I equally offended somebody whose name I never mentioned in Kakamega over the weekend about this issue of opulence. I just wondered, how would an MP be able to donate 20 million shillings at a Harambe? He was very offended. In another function, I saw a minister of this government carrying a white bag, on the back like this, and started announcing how many millions are in that bag. Said, Moja, Billy. No. Mr. Speaker, if we don't refuse these things, people like Murkomen will think that they are giving us their money. It's not their money. Those are proceeds of corruption. This House is saying no. Because of that anger, look at what our children did. Mr. Speaker, people are angry and hate us as leadership because every weekend, helicopters, they crisscross the skies, all of them going to functions where these millions are being dished. Mr. Speaker, the fuel guzzlers that we drive, I know if you go to this parking, Mr. Speaker, you can see the difference between the vehicle four-wheel drive driven by your senators compared to those ones driven by members of the National Assembly. In the parking of the Senate, you see Prados. But in the parking of the National Assembly, you see high-end vehicles that sometimes you only see. And why, Mr. Speaker? Because of an unconstitutional fund called CDF. That unconstitutional fund the courts made a pronouncement that it was unconstitutional and illegal. How did we respond as Parliament? The National Assembly, without blinking an eye, went and exercised legislative impunity by twisting the act so as to be allowed to continue with that unconstitutional, illegal process. Mr. Speaker, as I speak to these gastlers, you have seen colleagues. You are there struggling to rush to this Senate, then an MP, then a Secretary General of a political party comes with chase cars, his vehicle having the national flags with a siren, and the police does not arrest those people. The law is very clear on who should actually fly the national flag. The law should be very clear on whose convoy should be cleared with sirens. This is the impunity that is making our young people to turn against us. Mr. Speaker, I want to celebrate the President for the remark he made on Sunday during the interview that he was fielding questions. I did not support the fact that the President was fielding questions. I did not. Because I know that the President has people who are supposed to have fielded those questions. As like the leader of the majority was saying, the responses to security that the President was doing should either have been done by regular briefs by the IG or by Professor Kidura Kindiki. What was the President being put there, being humiliated by the people of the media? But I celebrate him for accepting that we have wasteful expenditure in several offices in this country. Professor respected Gitu Muigai gave, while in office, a legal advisory opinion on something called the Office of the First Lady. I urge you, colleagues, to go and read that opinion. He convinced me, and those who will read it after me, that the issue of First Lady is actually foreign to our Constitution. As if it's not enough, we had not only have the office of the First Lady, wife of the President, gobbling millions of shillings, we also have another one for the office of the wife of the Deputy President, another one for the office of the wife of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, another one for the office of the governors. I always say, God bless Kenya. If I had that ambition, then if I were to ascend to one of these offices that people think they should have those wives as first ladies, you would check my family. Who will be my wife? Who will be the first lady? Will be my first wife, my second wife, my third? Which one? Those are private family issues that should never be brought in public. I am a student of Michael Kijana Wamalwa. I am a student of George Welime Captain. I never saw Wamalwa's wife or George Welime's Captain's wife address any function, not in Luhyaland, not in their constituencies, nowhere else. Their purpose was to make sure that visitors have eaten. What became of husbands in this country? Mr. Speaker, very quickly, because the light is now on, People are angry and hate us because of impunity. The impunity you are seeing, that we have a director of public prosecutions who, from Monday to Friday, sits scheming on which language and which law to use so as to help people who are politically correct, criminals who have court cases, to be released. I don't know if that is why we separated the office of the Attorney General from the office of the Director of Public Prosecution and made it an independent office. Not only from Kakamega, but the DPP is my sister's son from Malinya there. That it's not necessary. Let criminals who have stolen property, and you know them, go through the due process. If it was working, some of the ministers in office today would not be ministers. They became ministers because a corrupt Parliament allowed them to become ministers, and then the DPP followed it up by withdrawing their cases. Mr. Speaker, impunity of tribalism. Leader of the majority, you have said it. Where will the children from the tribes where the president does not come from, where a deputy president does not come from, where the prime cabinet secretary does not come from, how will they get jobs? Mr. Speaker, they hate us because of the impunity of nepotism. I know of a cabinet secretary who has employed in his office 2 sons of, yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the impunity, shooting members of the public dead, and they are set free. And we say we are living in a country of rule of law. Mr. Speaker, there is anger and hatred because the government is unable to fix this monster called CBC system. That system has killed free primary education. That system has destroyed the quality of education. For many years, my children have been doing the exam at Malinya Primary School, all of them. It's only right now that for the first time, my daughter, Sonia Inuni Khaluare, is now in class 7 junior secondary in a private school, because at Malinya Primary School, where we all went to, all my children and myself, it has collapsed. There are 2 teachers in a class of 150 teaching our children of the poor. So there's no learning going on, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, there is anger and hatred because of the insensitivity of this Parliament. We are so insensitive that when the issue of housing levy was raised, we did not respond critically. Allow me just to conclude. Mr. Speaker, can I?
Give Senator Boni further 3 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the housing levy, I was shocked. We were addressed by the CS National Treasury, who told us that they were contemplating investing the money collected from the housing levy into treasury bills, meaning that we got money from members of the public and we are unable to absorb it. It therefore teaches me that we should have collected less to meet our capacity to absorb, instead of wiping people's pay slips, and now we are unable to use that money. Mr. Speaker, finally, things to do. Mr. President, dissolve cabinet, reconstitute it. Mr. President, disband officers outside the Constitution, including CAS, including Prime Cabinet Secretary. It is not in the Constitution of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, including officers of First Ladies, including, Mr. Speaker, advisors. If advisors are useful, then what David Lee is doing is not advice, is misadvice. Mr. Speaker, the President should quickly restructure the security organs by firing people, the IG included. And finally, but not least, all the Sky teams must be grounded. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm on.
Senator Wambua. Senator Enoch.
Yeah? Okay, let me use the dispatch. I have a lot of documents. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing us to provide leadership. Mr. Speaker, we are doing this at a time that the people of Kenya feel, and rightfully so, that leaders have used them and dumped them. They feel that, Mr. Speaker, that they held the ladder for us to climb to the top of the tree and appropriate fruits for everyone. But when we got to the top, we kicked the ladder and we are eating the fruits alone, enjoying the fruits of their labor and vomiting on their heads. Mr. Speaker, this is a time of crisis. And at a time of crisis, the leadership must be demonstrated. We are here, Mr. Speaker, as the upper house, as senators of the Republic of Kenya, to provide that leadership. Mr. Speaker, we are hearing a lot of things from young people, from our constituents, and we cannot pretend that the things that these people are saying don't make sense to us. These things are sensible. I want to address myself, Mr. Speaker, to 3 issues in that motion. First, Mr. Speaker, is on the Finance Bill 2024-2025, which was a monster that triggered the crisis that this country finds itself in. If the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, had listened to the people, we would not be where we are today. As a Speaker, that's a point at which I want to respectively, as a leader, differ with the President on his comment during the interview. And 4 members of the National Assembly who voted in support of the finance bill would be our future heroes. Mr. Speaker, those 204 members of the National Assembly who voted yes for this bill are sellouts. They have failed this country. They have failed their constituents. They have reason to apologize to this country. As a Speaker, we are where we are, deep into a crisis that threatens to tear our country apart. The young people on the streets are the true patriots, people driven by a deep sense of love for their country. They don't want their country to go to the dogs. They love their country, they love their lives, they have a future to look into. The Speaker, I must applaud this upper house of the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya for at a time like this, because this is what is required of leadership. The leaders in the lower house, whose action has brought us where we are, have run away. We are here to clean up their mess. They should forever occupy their space and listen when the people of Kenya speak. They must listen when the upper house speaks. Mr. Speaker, my reading of Article 115 of the Constitution on presidential assent and referral tells me that, Mr. Speaker, we have a window to take possession of the finance bill referred by the President to Parliament and deal with it. Why do I say this, Mr. Speaker? I say this, Mr. Speaker, because the article deliberately says that the President shall refer the bill back to Parliament for reconsideration. Article 93 of the Constitution is both the National Assembly and the Senate. Mr. Speaker, lead with courage. Bring that bill to the floor of this House this afternoon or tomorrow, and let us deal with it. The Speaker, on the matter of the austerity measures as captured in the motion that we are debating today. First, I want to call out the SRC, led by Lynn Cherop Megich. You are completely out of order, completely out of order. How dare you publish salary increments for public and state officers at such a time as this? What exactly do you want to achieve? In fact, Mr. Speaker, because the majority leader, when he was moving this motion, he said that there are some institutions that must appear before us. The first institution should be the SRC. Who has sent them to fuel discontent in the country at a time that this country is bleeding? Who does that? Mr. Speaker, I want to echo the words of my leader, the minority leader in the Senate. We as senators, and we will pass it as a resolution at the end of this motion, we are not interested in that pay rise. We are not interested. In fact, one of the conversations that we have been having, and it will crystallize by the end of this motion, is where do we cut our own budgets as a Senate, as individual senators? For the SRC to do what they have done, I want to say this on the floor of this House: shame on that institution, and shame on Lynn Cherop Megich. The Speaker, the other officer that I want to call out, and I want to borrow the ears of the majority leader, because this is important. This is very important. I want to call out the head of public service, and for a reason. On May 24th, a day before this crisis started in this country, the head of public service wrote to the Public Service Commission to begin the process of recruiting CASs, the Cabinet Administrative Secretaries. Who does that at such a time as this? Who does that? Mr. Speaker, we want to call on the head of public service to receive that letter like yesterday. You cannot be advising or seeking advice from the PSC on how to recruit cabinet administrative secretaries at a time that we are saying we cannot afford the cost of running these offices. The Speaker, the next person of interest that should appear before this Senate and speak to the country is the head of the public service. The Speaker, I want to challenge the President, respectively again. The cost of living is what it is. Too much talk is not helping anyone. We have said everything that could be said. It is time for action. And there are things that I know the President can do and bring down the temperatures in this country. One of the things that he can do, even today, is to reduce the size of his cabinet. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution, Article 152, gives the President the minimum number of cabinet secretaries and the maximum number. He can appoint between 14 cabinet secretaries and 22 cabinet secretaries. As we speak now, we have 21 cabinet secretaries. The Speaker, I want to call on the President, as a demonstration that he has listened and understood what the people are saying. Reduce the size of your cabinet from 21 to 14, the minimum. Merge departments. Reduce the number of principal secretaries from 51 to around 30, or even 14, to match the number of cabinet secretaries that we have. The Speaker, and there is comparable jurisdiction to this argument. When you look at the United States of America, where we go to borrow money all the time, and we go for benchmarking all the time, Senator Alwale, the size of the cabinet in the US is 15, with a population of more than 340 million people. 14 cabinet secretaries in the US. When you look at China, with a population of more than 1.5 billion people, the members of the State Council, whose equivalent is the cabinet secretaries, are 26. What are we doing with 21 cabinet secretaries with a population of less than 60 million people and an economy that cannot support that kind of expenditure? The Speaker, let us reduce that number. The Speaker, on the matter of security, it is time for us all, and especially those who are in authority, to walk the talk. As I said, too much talk is not helping anyone. I'm hearing of the usual threats that those who break the law will face the full force of the law. That as we carry out these investigations, no stone will be left unturned. Mr. Speaker, those things stopped making sense a long time ago. It is time for action. This sitting of the Senate is a call to action, both from us and those others who are in positions of responsibility. Mr. President, if you love your country and you have listened to what the demonstrators are saying, let aids roll in the security apparatus and departments of this country. Speaker, I asked some young people from my office to tell me when, lastly, the Inspector General of Police, Japheth Kome, spoke to this nation. And they went to the archives and they have told me that the last time that the IG spoke to Kenyans was on 17th of April 2024. And what was he saying? He was saying, and I quote, that as the Inspector General of Police, I would like to assure you, he is speaking to a contingent of police officers being dispatched to Haiti. He's saying, I want to assure you that they, the officers, have the capability, capacity, and training to succeed in this mission, and that they will deliver when they get to Haiti. That's the last thing that Kenyans heard from the IG. When the country is burning, the IG is silent. So, Speaker, one of the requirements for demonstrations is that demonstrators would notify the police, they would be guided on where to go and how to organize their demonstrations, be escorted through streets or wherever they are going, presentation of petitions. The IG is absent. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, the words that the President used on the former IG, Mr. Mutiambai, on the level of incompetence and being clueless, perhaps those words are better suited used on IG Kome. Perhaps actually the President spoke too early when he addressed Mutiambai. Talking about incompetence and lack of capacity, the Inspector General of Police is the embodiment of lack of capacity to lead the Kenya Police Service. Mr. Kome must leave office immediately for this country to enjoy peace and tranquility. The Speaker, lastly, let me speak very briefly on this matter of corruption. The Speaker, corruption has become the order of the day in this country. Unfortunately, the institution that has been charged with the responsibility of fighting corruption is itself the biggest den of corruption. The EFCC, the Speaker, is either unwilling or unable to fight corruption in this country. They will not help us in this journey. The Speaker, I've listened to the presentation by the majority leader on the performance of the judiciary. Though I have gone on record to applaud the CJ, the Chief Justice, for having the courage to lead from the front, a lot more needs to be done in the judiciary, and especially on matters corruption. That justice now has become a commodity of sale in the judiciary is a very sad state of affairs in our country. We want this monster to be tackled properly, and the Speaker also challenged the demand side of corruption. Because there's also a demand side of corruption, Mr. Speaker. We must have a candid conversation as a country. When churches and schools and hospitals and all manner of institutions, when they look at their members of parliament, the people serving the public service, as the people who are supposed to give them money in Arambes to do all these manner of things every weekend, every day of the week, where is it that we expect these people to get this money from? Mr. Speaker, we must have a national dialogue, a national conversation on how to fight corruption. But lastly, Mr. Speaker, including what Senator Onyonka has said, but more seriously and more importantly, this thing about members of parliament, about public officers being expected to dish out money in Arambes every day,
Let's add 2 minutes for the Senator to conclude.
Thank you, the Speaker, for indulging me. So this idea of members of parliament being seen as moving ATMs, people who have so much money to just give, to people. Mr. Speaker, that will not help us. We must learn to live within our means, both the leaders and the people being led. Let people not expect too much money, too much contributions from members at a time that we are saying we must uphold austerity for this country to move forward. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, as the majority has said in moving the motion, let us now have a new budget estimate tabled before Parliament so that now we can debate and pass a budget that reflects our ability to finance our own operations. There's no reason why the members of the National Assembly added themselves 30 million shillings for CDF. What for? If you multiply 30 million shillings by 280 constituencies, that is 87 billion Kenya shillings. 8.7 billion Kenya shillings. Why are we doing that? For what? In fact, that money should be going to counties as part of the equitable share. The Speaker, we must confront these issues and deal with them as they are. The Speaker, with those many remarks, I support the motion.
Senator Samson Cherargei.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I want to congratulate the majority and minority leader and my colleagues, Mr. Speaker, for having to resist the temptation to go and hide, just like our colleagues have done, Mr. Speaker. I would be somewhere in Kimondi Forest near Kapsabet, running away from my president. And I want to ask, in fact, this should be corruption, where you run away from your duty, Mr. Speaker. I remember when we were supposed to resume is when unfortunate events and incidences were happening in the city, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that I'm among the senators who found it wise to continue with our duty because we are being paid to proceed with our duty as envisaged by Article 96, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to tell Kenyans, including our young brothers and sisters, the Generation Z, because some of us are millennials, that we have heard you, we listen to you, we apologize for some of the transgressions that might have escaped our attention in addressing some of the challenges, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while a lot has gone through in this country, we must agree that some of these challenges that we face as a nation, Mr. Speaker, build up for many years, many decades, Mr. Speaker. Many challenges since, Mr. Speaker, the onset and independence, both pre and most post-colonial independence of this republic, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, when the young people decided to visit Parliament and enjoy the hospitality, although they went away with a number of flags, Mr. Speaker, and also were able to take photos at the floor of the House, at the National Assembly to be precise. And I saw one of the pastors, I don't know, speaking at that aftermath, Mr. Speaker. It was very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker. I saw people who were running helter and skelter, Mr. Speaker. The unfortunate part, as we was some of the media houses were streaming live, Mr. Speaker, exposing the lives of many members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I know yourself, not specifically, but the substantive Speaker and Senator Chute and other colleagues said to use ambulances, Mr. Speaker, to escape the arm, Mr. Speaker. Even as that happened, Mr. Speaker, and I want to point out this, under Article 118, Article 34 and 35, right to freedom of information and media, we should not, even at any given time, Mr. Speaker, block or deny access to media the way it has been done, Mr. Speaker. We should look access of media to the floor and to Parliament prisons case by case, Mr. Speaker, because I'm told there is a silent gag order that has been issued against access of media to the prisons. Very unfair. Kenyans need to know what is happening, especially as the legislators transact business, Mr. Speaker. So I hope through your office you can consult and ensure that case by case, while I do not agree that media were able to expose members of Parliament and report live that they were being evacuated through the tunnel or being taken away by the ambulances or they were changing clothes, Mr. Speaker, I met one member of National Assembly decided to remove the entire suit and wear a vest and a boxer to escape the rat, Mr. Speaker, through Landimawe, Mr. Speaker, in this city. While those are tactics that people evaded what was happening in that day, Mr. Speaker, it is not a justification to deny media access and access to media to the prisons of Parliament. And therefore, I want to ask your office and Parliamentary Service Commission to resist the temptation to give out unconstitutional orders of denying access of media, because Kenyans need to know what we are doing. Mr. Speaker, I have used an example of 1932, when there were allegations that there was a letter that was being sent to the House of Congress and Senate that had poison. The Congress decided to close the House and run away. In the subsequent elections, the entire congressmen were voted out, but the Senate of the Republic of United States of America remained true to its cause and addressed the remember. And that is why we have distinguished ourselves, Mr. Speaker, as the upper house. Mr. Speaker, there are many issues that young people have raised. Issue of corruption, issue of governance, both at national and county governments, Mr. Speaker. Issue of lack of opportunities. Issue of nepotism, Mr. Speaker. Issue of not being listened to, Mr. Speaker. There are many challenges, and I want to assure the Gen Z and any other Kenyan, Mr. Speaker, Parliament is a public place. If there were proper organization, they would have accessed Parliament. Many Kenyans access Parliament. I want to put this straight, Mr. Speaker. Under Article 126, 1 of the Constitution of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, Parliament can sit anywhere. And I want to call upon the Gen Z and any other Kenyan can sit in Uhuru Park. Parliament can sit in Migori. That is why we have Senate machinery, Mr. Speaker. The Constitution gives us as a Parliament to sit even in Garissa, in Mandera, even in your county, Mr. Speaker, and listen to the Kenyans. And I'm happy as we talk this, Mr. Speaker, on the Senate machinery, we are doing it in Busia. We have done it in Makueni. We did it in Turkana. We have done it in Uasin Gishu, Mr. Speaker. Kenyans should know that Parliament is ready to listen to them. Under Article 126 of the Constitution, Parliament can sit anywhere within the border. Even if they want us to sit in KICC, we can sit there, Mr. Speaker, and listen to Kenyans, and especially the Gen Z, Mr. Speaker. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to send my deepest condolences, Mr. Speaker, from my family, from myself and the great people of Nandi County, to many Kenyans who have lost their lives, unfortunately, and wish quick recovery to many Kenyans who, as both, Mr. Speaker, have endured injuries during this, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, even when we exercise Article 37, Mr. Speaker, The law is that it must be peaceful and unarmed. On the first few days when the young people came out, Mr. Speaker, the protests were largely peaceful. It was later, Mr. Speaker, infiltrated by the criminals, Mr. Speaker. We've seen incidences where the security officers have been injured. You remember the inspector of the police that lost both hands, Mr. Speaker? We have a number of police officers who they have injured and some have lost their lives, as well as the protesters, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask, even as you protest under Article 37, Mr. Speaker, which is your right, peacefully and unarmed, let us resist the temptation of allowing goons and criminals to infiltrate, Mr. Speaker. And I want to challenge the DCI and other security agencies, Mr. Speaker. Should anybody who is a criminal or goon who is looting public property, Mr. Speaker, because I know, Mr. Speaker, the business community was stating that, and I hope the Ministry of Interior will sit and evaluate at the end of all these chaos, Mr. Speaker, because I saw they were putting value of looted property to be around 3 billion Kenyan shillings, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I want to challenge, Mr. Speaker, that even as young people and any, they should do so in a peaceful manner, and the police should provide, Mr. Speaker, the necessary security. Mr. Speaker, I want to borrow the many other issues that my colleagues and associates strongly with. Ordinarily, it should not be the president responding to all these other issues, especially on regular security briefs, Mr. Speaker. I would have expected even the police spokesperson. We used to have somebody called Owino as the police spokesperson. Mr. Speaker, Brian Shusho. Now we have the Inspector General of Police. In fact, the only time Inspector General of Police has responded is when he saw allocations of fatalities in Haiti. He sent a statement, Mr. Speaker. Even not legally, even morally, Mr. Speaker, the Inspector General of Police should have even appeared on a regular basis to update the country on security situation, Mr. Speaker, and tell the country how many people, unfortunately, have died, how many have injured, how many properties have been looted, or what is the state of the security, Mr. Speaker. What is the state of the homeland security, Mr. Speaker? I think that is the least we expected from Inspector General of Police, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I think his stay in office is no longer tenable, Mr. Speaker. We must do a proper reshuffle within the security apparatus of this country, especially the homeland security, Mr. Speaker, so that we have a police service, not a police force, as was envisaged by the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. So I agree with my colleagues that the Inspector General of Police must be called out for failing to provide leadership, Mr. Speaker, for failing to morally and legally even update the country on security situation, Mr. Speaker. We are being told there was demos, Mr. Speaker, yesterday. There are others being planned on the way. The least we expect, cases of where police have shot, Mr. Speaker, incidences. He should be briefing the country at what circumstances that the police shoot some of the protesters, and are they working together with independent policing oversight authority? I pour, Mr. Speaker. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, is on corruption. My colleagues has put it, we know, Mr. Speaker, when I raised an issue of opulence of some of the cabinet ministers, I was blasted, I was accused of being jealous, I was accused of not knowing how to do deals. Mr. Speaker, I was accused of coming to take tea and mandazi in Parliament instead of going to Tanzania and other countries to broker deals, Mr. Speaker, which is very unfortunate. And I was just calling out, don't eat too much and vomit before the feet of Kenyans. As a former ambassador would say, Mr. Speaker. Even in my culture, where I come from, you don't eat and open your shirt. It is a culture, Mr. Speaker. And I called out, and you remember, I was being blasted left, right, and center, Mr. Speaker, and I warned them that if this trend of displaying opulence by members of parliament and some cabinet ministers without humility, and I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, for the last 2 weekends, at least the quality of hair has improved. Because when choppers were crisscrossing, it was also affecting our agenda of climate change, Mr. Speaker, where people would fly in, land, reorganize the program of a funeral or a church service, speak, insult other elected leaders, Mr. Speaker, call them dimwits, call them fools, the way I was being called in Nandi last year, give out the money that God knows where they got it from, millions of shillings, and they fly away from the chopper, disrupting, Mr. Speaker, a social function for the next 1 hour or 30 minutes, Mr. Speaker, until they settle, Mr. Speaker. So the issue of corruption, and I think, Mr. Speaker, as a proposal to the President and EACC, Mr. Speaker, we must start doing lifestyle audits to all of us, state officers and all governors. Any person who is serving in a public office, we must do lifestyle audit. We must know, so that the reason Kenyans were on the streets, the reason Gen Z were calling us out, is because they are wondering, how can you contribute 20 million shillings in an Arambe, and yet they don't have even 100 shillings. They were wondering, minister would be in Arambe counting millions of shillings, and the roads are not there, Mr. Speaker. And the water is not there, Mr. Speaker. So they are wondering, we are telling them the economy is bad, but we preside an Arambe worth millions of shillings, Mr. Speaker. It is not bad to do an Arambe. It is not bad to help people, but we must do their part. And I'm telling you, I know some people, even who had bought shirts for funerals, dark suits, because their only thing was just, when they hear social function, Senator Sifuna, they appear. But they have never visited the bad roads that are in our counties, or look even at the water, Mr. Speaker. But they will find time to go and insult other leaders, Mr. Speaker. I think corruption also is not doing your job, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't necessarily that you have stolen, failing to do your job with integrity, reporting to your duty station. And therefore, number 3, I propose that EACC must be disbanded forthwith with capital letters. They have failed from national to counties, Mr. Speaker. In fact, when you steal, they come and see you may attend, they slap you on the wrist, and they go away. If today EACC was serious, 3/4 of governors would be in jail by now. I can tell you for free. Because even some of the people serving at the state officers, Mr. Speaker, they should be in jail. But EACC have failed us. While I agree they don't have enough resources, it is time we disband the EACC and restructure EACC and redevelop EACC to win back the public confidence, Mr. Speaker, of this republic going into the future. If you ask EACC and friends and colleagues, I have been privileged to serve as JLAC chair. And I remember we did invite EACC in the last session. The only conviction EACC had done is a bribery of 20,000 shillings. What are we telling Kenyans? What are we telling Gen Z when they can see this club that you have built somewhere in a town, they can see these are proceeds of crime? And that the EACC will turn a blind eye, Mr. Speaker. We must resist, and I want to request, even as EACC struggle with the challenges of resources, we must disband, restructure to win the public confidence of this republic, Mr. Speaker. Number 4, Mr. Speaker, before I finish with austerities, this issue of SRC increasing the salaries of members of parliament and state officers is in bad faith. It wants to increase the public discontent, Mr. Speaker, and SRC must be called out, Mr. Speaker. You remember when UHC colleagues, interns, we invited SRC here. They told us there is no money to increase for UHC doctors or JSS, but they are quick to increase money for us members of parliament to create discontent and fuel the country into discontentment of members of parliament, Mr. Speaker. we never requested for the increment of salaries. We have never. SRC is abusing its own power by trying to set us against the public. And I'm happy a number of colleagues have responded to this blackmail, misleading corruption by SRC, Mr. Speaker. And I also propose SRC must be disbanded, Mr. Speaker, and serve. Let the SRC commissioners not serve monthly. They should serve as. Because the problem we have with SRC, they are not serving part-time. They are busy trying to set and regulate salaries so that they justify their work in office, Mr. Speaker. While SLRC chair is giving herself a 10 million car grant for a Prado from Toyota Kenya. She is increasing her salary she gets 2 car grants within 4 years, Mr. Speaker. The SRC, and I want to say and tell Kenyans, I am not interested. In fact, what I'm proposing going into the future, members of parliament, we should serve in part-time, just like other countries, Mr. Speaker. Then we agree how it works out. If that is the solution that will bring back the confidence of this Republic of Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on judiciary, I served and I have the privilege of information. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans file more than 500,000 cases per year. I saw the chief respectfully saying they can open up to midnight to handle these issues that we are experiencing. But she has never done anything about clearing backlog, Mr. Speaker. The bitterness Kenyans have is that they have a court case, they have not gotten a court order. For those people who do not have means, they are suffering, Mr. Speaker. But the Chief Justice, to appear right and to appear popular, not to appear right, to appear popular but not right, is just giving a public relation exercise to the gallery by saying now, since everybody is no longer safe from Gen Z, and you know he was visited the other day in his office, she thinks by saying, let us handle all the protesters being brought to court, Mr. Speaker, who are not orgoons, is fair. The real problem with judiciary is it should give us the matrix, the timeline of clearing cases, Mr. Speaker. And how can you justify from 1982, there is a court case up to today, a succession case, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, it's corruption. Kenyans are very, Mr. Speaker, are mad with all the institutions. And I want to tell everybody who is serving as a state officer, no one is no longer safe. Senator Majority Leader Aaron Cheruiyot will tell you, Wamboka Wanami and Samuel Atandi, when they wanted to cross for safety, they could not. Because the people say, ndio wale. And I'm telling you, some things happen that I'm not comfortable to share because this is parliamentary guided program. It is a PG rated, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, on austerity measures, I will tell, I can see Senator Faki is interested, I will tell him in camera. Mr. Speaker, I plead with the President and all of us, just in 2 minutes, Mr. Speaker, please let us not cut amount that we are going to JSS for 6,000 teachers. Most of these 46,000 are young people. If we can confirm them to permanent and pension, Mr. Speaker, we shall also be fair to young people on these 46,000 junior secondary schools. Mr. Speaker, number 2, let us not reduce the allocation to counties. Because it was not pro rata, as Majority Leader said, it was based on equity. Just a minute, Mr. Speaker. And also, finally, Mr. Speaker, let us not cut money that was going to confirm the UHC intern doctors, among others, within the medical sector, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, I support this motion. Let us bring back this nation to where it should be. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Mr. Sifuna.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. First, let me start by saying that I want to laud the leadership of the majority and the minority sides that have brought this motion this morning. And to just say to the Honorable Senator Aaron Cheruiyot that you will struggle, my brother, to make a better speech than what you've made this morning. And I am sure it has given a lot of hope to a lot of people in this country that, in fact, this institution of the Senate can rise to the occasion when other people are failing. They say that with great power comes great responsibility. And I don't think that in this House there was somebody with a greater responsibility, leader, to set the tone for the discussion that we want to have this particular morning. I think I hear what Kenyans are saying. They want to see from the leadership of this country contrition. They want to see remorse. They want to see us taking responsibility for everything that has happened, that has led us to this particular moment. And allow me to follow in your footsteps and also tender an unreserved apology to the people of Kenya if I have contributed in any way by my conduct, by my speech, to bringing the country to where it is today. I apologize for that. Honorable Speaker, as a senator of Nairobi, you know that Nairobi has borne the brunt of the protest, of the killings, of the loss of lives, of the loss of property. As we speak right now, we have 39, as of the last count, people who have lost lives across the country. and more than half of that, at least 19, have been killed in the city of Nairobi. Honorable Speaker, out of those 19 that have died in the city of Nairobi, between 6 and 8 of them, the numbers are yet to be confirmed, were actually very parliament. And as we join our country and our colleagues in mourning, I also want to take this opportunity to send my heartfelt condolences to all the families that have lost their loved ones in this particular protest. Of course, Honorable Speaker, because we have been the epicenter of these riots and protests, we have a lot of damage that has been done to public and private infrastructure. We have lost a lot of property. In fact, the value is unknown. We will need time to actually do an audit of all the property that has been destroyed. Businesses in Nairobi CBD have been shut. There have been all sorts of claims, Honorable Speaker. There's people who have come to me and even talked about ethnic profiling businesses, that it's certain communities that are being attacked and others are not being attacked. We are in a place where we have never been in terms of the crisis that is facing us. And all I hear the young people of this country saying is that we as a leadership now need to stop talking. We now need to stop talking and want to listen to these young people. Honorable Speaker, I have been turning down invitations to media houses because I'm asking these media houses, why don't you invite these Gen Zs themselves to tell you what it is they want, to paint a picture of the kind of country that they want? Would you believe it, Honorable Speaker? The many Gen Zs who are being invited to these TV shows are afraid that they will not leave that TV station and get home because they are afraid of being arrested or detained outside those TV stations. And the conversation here, Honorable Senator Cheruiyot, is that we now need to do certain things to facilitate a conversation to happen, starting with what we are doing here. We need to show remorse as leaders. We need to stop threats to people who are... I am in a WhatsApp group, somebody is sharing what is it called, a charge sheet of someone who's being arraigned in court because they said Ruto must go. I mean, Honorable Chair, we must get to a place where if we are going to have a national conversation, let us allow people to express themselves, and that is the only way we will hear what they have to say. We need to put aside our egos. I know some of the things that we are being told and the things that are being directed at us is very humiliating. As leaders, we are not accustomed to this. But, Honorable Speaker, it is a time to set egos aside and just listen. There is something very profound that the majority leader told me yesterday. He said, Sifuna, right now, there are no more political goals to be scored. There isn't even a political game now going on because all of us in the political class are actually indicted by the people of this republic that we have failed in terms of what we need to do to get this country where it's supposed to be. I have shared an example here that on the day of the 25th of June, Rado was being stoned in the city of Nairobi. And by the way, although it is a car that is popular with members of parliament, very many Kenyans actually drive this car. It is one of the most ubiquitous cars in the streets of Nairobi. So imagine you being a doctor or a lawyer, you have nothing to do with parliament, driving around the city and people attack you because of the car that you're driving. It is a problem that we have to solve. By our own conduct, we have put all of us in the line of fire. An MCA leaving the County Assembly of Nairobi, one of the nominated MCAs, was attacked, Honorable Speaker. And yes, she was, her car was badly damaged. She was badly hurt, including her driver. She had to get surgery. By the time people are saying, oh, stop, this is not a member of parliament, or this is a member of the National Assembly, you are already dead. That is what we are saying. We need to come and rise above all these differences that we've always had to have a conversation about our country. Kenya has changed forever. We must not allow us to go back to the bad manners. I was seeing clips of young people on TikTok saying they are very happy there are no more strobe lights, there are no more sirens, people are not overlapping. They are asking where have all these big vehicles gone in the streets of Nairobi. Honorable Speaker, I saw a newspaper article in the Standard today saying that MPs are in hiding, members of the National Assembly are in hiding. And the question is, where are these members? I'm very proud to be a senator today, that we are not hiding from the people. We are here to actually take responsibility for all our actions and to try and assuage or deal with the problems that we have contributed in bringing about. So, Honorable Speaker, there are things in my view, that we can do, and this moment does not call for us to tell the young people what to do. We need to demonstrate that we are hearing what they are saying and look at ourselves in the mirror, Honorable Speaker. It has to be about us. We start with the House of Senate and the House of Parliament generally, so that we are able to demonstrate that we understand what these young people are saying. So in my presentation, Honorable Speaker, I will be proposing that we don't tell anybody else other than ourselves what we are going to do going forward to try and help this country to move from the quagmire that it finds itself in. And there are very low-hanging fruits. My friends here have spoken, for instance, about the supposed salary increments. By the way, in defense of the SRC, I know many of you have bashed them here. That Gazette notice that is in the public domain and discussion right now was published on the 9th of August 2023, the day we went for elections. I am telling you, because it is supposed to be 2022, 9th of August 2022, because it's supposed to be that members of parliament, when you go for elections, people should know how much money you're going to make in advance. And the role of setting salaries was removed from us. The public still thinks that Sifuna has the power to increase his own salary. I do not have that power. That power is in a constitutional commission called the SRC. Honorable Speaker, what we need to do, and I'm very happy my colleagues who have gone before me have said it, in all honesty, nobody asked for that increment. Nobody that I know. Personally, I never asked for that increment of 14,000 shillings. Tone deaf if we are going to insist that we get that increment this particular year or next year, when the economy is in the doldrums, when many Kenyans have nothing to put on the table. So I also support the proposal by members who have spoken before me that we formally resolve that we as a Senate are not interested in any additional salaries this particular financial year. Number two, Honorable Speaker, we need to relook at our budgets in this House, and see where we can make major concessions and cuts for members of the public to feel that we are actually lessening the burden and not increasing the burden. And I want to give a personal example, and you'll forgive me if I'm giving out house secrets. Honorable Chair, when I became the Deputy Minority Whip, I was allocated a vehicle, a GK vehicle. On the first day that I used that car to go home, I passed through the expressway. I was shocked, Honorable Speaker, at the amount of money that is on my ETC card for my parliamentary car. As of this morning, when I use that same car to come here, there is 377,000 Kenyan shillings on my ETC. There is 377,000 Kenyan ETC of the vehicle that have been given by Parliament. It does not make sense. It does not make sense, Honorable Speaker. So what you do, members of Parliament, the staff of Parliament have to be honest with Kenyans. In the way the budgets of Parliament are prepared, there are ways and means of reducing the expenditure in this House in a manner that will reduce the burden on taxpayers. I honestly do not need all that money. Even if I ran up and down the expressway for a year, I would never exhaust 370,000 Kenyan shillings. So, Honorable Speaker, we must do this so that we demonstrate to the people that we are serious about what we are talking about. Number three, Honorable Speaker, I want to speak about something in the motion. The majority leader proposed that National Assembly should reconvene so that they deal with the question of the presidential memorandum on the finance bill. Mr. Speaker, just as a constitutional lawyer, we in the opposition or in the minority have a different take on how this finance bill should be dealt with. Honorable Speaker, if you look at Article 115, on what should happen to a bill when it is sent back to Parliament. 115 sub-article 3, it says, if Parliament amends the bill fully accommodating the President's reservations, the appropriate Speaker shall resubmit it to the President for assent. What that means, Honourable Leader, is that he sends something back after that process of consideration of his memorandum. I do not think the Constitution envisaged a situation where you are sending a blank document from Parliament to the President for assent. Because what the presidential memorandum is proposing is a deletion of all the clauses contained in the finance bill. So you will have an empty piece of paper. It will have nothing on it. Then you are sending it back to the president for assent. What is he assenting to? So the proposal that has come from Honorable Tiende Amolo, for us, makes a bit more sense. That you allow there to be a bill that is introduced to repeal the finance bill as was passed. Because in the language of Article 115, we do not think that it can be done the way that it is being proposed. So, Honorable Speaker, another thing that we can do, let there be a public pronouncement from the head of state that we are going to stop these arrests, these abductions that have been ongoing, free everyone who's been arrested because of this protest, as the majority leader said, honor our dead and the people who are still in hospitals. There is opulence and corruption and the corrupting influence of money in politics. Honorable Majority Leader, when you spoke about that, I was very happy because we have to have a conversation. I was at a conference at one place and somebody was saying how it has become expensive to join politics. And I said it is actually used as a scare tactic to scare away people from political participation. If a young man hears that for you to become the Senator of Nairobi, you need 70 million shillings or 100 million shillings, where do you think that person will never participate in elections? Where are we supposed to get this money? We want the young people to understand that they have demonstrated to this country that you in fact do not need the sort of resources that we are told you need for you to become a political player. Honorable Speaker, there's this question of a ban on harambes. As a lawyer, I am aware there is already legislation that tries to limit participation of political players in harambes, but is limited to the last few months. I think it's, is it 6 months or 9 months to the election? What we should be doing, we should be saying, because now it has become culture that immediately after elections anyway, after you are sworn in, your opponent is already on the ground saying Sifuna must go. So why don't we just extend the period and say throughout the term of parliament, members of parliament should not be allowed to participate in these harambes and demonstrate the sort of opulence that we have seen. The majority leader and Honorable Halwale has spoken about a rigged economy, and that is something that has touched my heart. Those of us who are born where we were born, Honorable Speaker, many of our young people, including myself, have always wondered how is it possible that people who we know had lesser grades, had far inferior grades in school. We were better than them at everything. They are making progress at a faster rate just because of their second name. We are just there languishing. People have 6 degrees, have never gotten an opportunity. People go for interview after interview. The moment somebody sees your name is Watenya or Sifuna, your CV is put aside. Wanasema leta ya huyu. It is very embarrassing, Honorable Majority Leader, that sometimes an entire institution from top to bottom has members of only one office. I think these are the things that are going to make our people extremely mad every time these matters are brought about. So if you don't address these matters, Honorable Speaker, we are not going to be able to deal with the problem. We have seen young people, especially when it comes to employment in public service. Honorable Speaker, you qualify as a teacher. You are waiting all your life to be employed as a teacher. Then you see leaders in public rallies, in funerals, handing and dishing out employment letters from TSC. And when you go to TSC, they tell you, oh, there is a system, everybody is logged in, and see which criteria is used, and they eventually reach you. But you can see people dishing out letters from TSC, from KWS, from NYS, in harambes and in funerals, Honorable Speaker. I think, and even police, these are the things that we need to work on as a leadership so that we stop all this anger that you see. Let me go to another thing, Honorable Speaker. An angry people cannot be reasoned with. Right now, people are very angry. And this is why I'm trying to, explain to this House that we are not going to be prescriptive in how we deal with this issue. Honorable Speaker, that we can demonstrate to the country that at least there is a place where a conversation can be had. Senate is the only House of Parliament that goes to the people. We don't fear the people. That's why we are still here. So if it is possible for us, even if it is going to Uhuru Park, as somebody has suggested, we are ready to be insulted because at some point we deserve to be insulted. But at the very end of those insults, I think we will be able to pick some few things. Honorable Majority Leader was telling us a story of how he logged into one of the Twitter spaces and he said, There was maybe 60% expletives and insults, but 40% was good material, and it has inspired even the speech that he made this morning. So let us put ourselves at the disposal of the people. We should be available to the people so that we deal with this. On debt, I agree with you, Honorable Majority Leader, that there has to be a public audit of all Kenya's debt so that we know what the truth about this is. On budget, we have explained, and I've given an example here, of how we feel that sometimes our budgeting process is padded in such a way that it allows for budgeted corruption. We have estimated, Honorable Speaker, at least those of us on the minority side, that we can do away with at least 1 trillion shillings in this budget. And we don't need to punish anyone. We just need to cut on expenditure in our own institutions. I will go to some of the proposals that I have received from members of the public. Number one, Honorable Speaker, there needs to be an audit of all appointments from September 13th, 2023. Because as Honorable Senator Halwale spoke and said, there are some offices that have been created that we do not even understand the basis of their existence. Look at the number of advisors in government. There needs to be a public audit of all these advisors. And tell Kenyans why it is okay for one office of the advisor on the economic matters, Honorable Halwale, to have more money for travel than 9 committees of this House combined. It doesn't make any sense. So the specter of personal assistance in government, we need a public audit of that. There was another office that was created, and this one you'll forgive me, Majority Leader, of faith intercessors. We need a public audit of who are these people and why are they earning public money. Honorable Speaker, I had occasion to see one business card of one of those faith intercessors. It was the most powerful business card I have ever seen in my life. Honorable Speaker, you have spoken about the office of the First Lady, and I am happy that the President himself took a first initial step to say that office will cease existing from, I think he said, Monday of this week. It had 285 employees. I am telling you. The Deputy President, the wife of the Deputy President's office, 100 employees. Honorable Speaker, we cannot continue like this. Then there is a specter of retreats. And this one, we are all guilty as members of this House. We need to look at our retreats, whether the retreats we are taking are necessary, whether these meetings cannot be had here, whether those resolutions cannot be. And then in the independent commissions, in the ministries and the corporations, I was just being told that there actually also exist fake retreats. There's something called a fake retreat, where there was no retreat, but people are being paid for going on a retreat. Then on the foreign trips, Honorable Speaker, these are things we all understand. Let us be able to demonstrate to the public that we're actually serious and we hear them. Just one more minute.
Let's add in 1 more minute to conclude.
And then on the ODPP, I was just conferring here with my friend, the Senator for Migori. We were shocked when we heard that a plea bargain had been entered in the Migori corruption case, that a governor who's been accused of stealing billions of shillings has agreed to return 300 million, and then the case is withdrawn. I want to call for an audit of all the in the past 12 or 24 months, Honorable Speaker, so that we understand the legal basis for the withdrawal of these cases, because this is where we are failing. For as long as you can demonstrate, Honorable Speaker, that these cases are going nowhere, that is where people get the confidence that the Majority Leader was speaking about to engage in some of these things. Lastly, we need respect for the Constitution and constitutional institutions and the bodies across the public service and across the national executive infrastructure. So, for instance, Honorable Speaker, I was being given an example that even the mess we have in the management of public service, that an executive order is made on HR matters to a body called State Corporations Advisory Committee, which is duplication of roles. So, Honorable Speaker, I support this motion, and let us put up that humane face that Kenyans are looking to see, that we can actually engage on these matters. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mohamed Chute.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. My son, Honorable Speaker, who is in St. Vincent Medical College, called me yesterday and asked me, Baba, why are these people calling you MPigs? He asked me, Gen Zs, why are they calling parliamentarians MPigs? And I told him, I don't know, but there is something that is wrong with us. Honorable Speaker, in support of this motion, let me say a few things.
Senator Osotsi, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I think we are having a very important reflection in this House. We are talking to matters of discrimination. We are talking to matter of unethical. But we are seeing the same being practiced even before our own eyes. Mr. Speaker, I came here as the first person to log in, and I'm seeing that the members are being called to contribute as we sit here and wait. Is this fair? When we are talking about fairness, we should exercise that fairness, even in this motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us follow the list that is there on the screen so that we exercise fairness. I understand leadership can be given priority. But what about people who are not in leadership and there is priority list there? Let us follow the list, Mr. Speaker, so that we demonstrate to Kenyans that indeed we are talking about fairness.
Just a moment, Senator Chute. Senator Osotsi, am I to understand that by calling Senator Mohammed Chute, the chair is not following the order of debate? Because the speaker just before Senator Chute was Senator Sifuna, and he's in the leadership. And every institution, the reason why Senator Cherargei was given an opportunity was because he was next in the list, and Senator Lelengwe, who is in leadership, was not on the list. And the order of this House is that if one speaker on this side speaks, I have to give an opportunity to speakers on the other side. Senator Osotsi. And I've actually had, you know very well that your colleague, Senator Beatrice Ogola, who is the next speaker, made a special request because she is traveling. The chair has to listen to such pleas from members from time to time so that we can accommodate for them. So there is no way, Senator Osotsi, you can stand on the floor of this House and accuse the chair of being unfair. Senator Osotsi, we agreed you're going to speak after Beatrice on that side.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I hope my friend Osotsi is not complaining about me, because I was definitely ahead of him. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I was talking about Gen Zs. And let me take this opportunity to thank our majority leader and the minority leader. You've done something extremely, what I've never thought of, that you fought, you talked, and you represented this country, not your parties, not an individual interest. Thank you very much, and may God bless you. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, we have a problem. And the problem facing this country is huge. And Gen Zs are asking for a solution. They are not asking for discussion. What is the solution? Honorable Speaker, first of all, what is important is this. When the President discussed this issue of the finance bill,
I know his intentions were very good, but the problem was communication. It was not communicated well, and that is why we are facing the problem we are facing today. Honorable Speaker, our problem is not the issue of finance bill only. This country is rotten, rotten to the core. What is our problem? Problem is excesses, number one. You will find a minister or an MP who is well connected, goes to Harambee and contributes 20 million shillings. And he starts with 5 million. One club, 5 million. Second club, 6 million. 7, 8 million. 9, 10 million. And then 20 million. Honorable Speaker, if somebody from Marsabit calls me and says, hawa watu wametoa hiyo pesa wapi mzee? I told him, I don't know. Wametoa wapi? I don't know. I saw a minister, CS, wearing a watch inaitwa Hublot. I don't know if it's Hublo or Hublot. That one, I need to be corrected. Costing 3.2 million shillings. If you look at his belt, 500,000 shillings. His shoes, 680,000 shillings. The suit, almost 1.2 million. 6 million shillings. And then if someone asks him, he says, I'll go to where your kotini says. Gen Zs have brought these issues, and we are going to face it head on. Honorable, if we want to stop corruption and excesses, we must start from the counties. If you look at, I'm in the Devolution Committee, my chair is here, Chair Abbas, and some development projects counties are up to the tune of 6% only. Out of 8 to 9 billion, 10 billion shillings, 6% of 10 billion is maybe 6 million only, if I'm not wrong. So, if we ask the Senate today to stop sending development funds to some counties, will I be wrong? No, because there is no development. There is none. Even, let us look at Kisii. It's a 6%. Nairobi, 6%. So, Honorable Speaker, let me thank the Gen Zs, other people or persons or groups who can join JCs to support this country or to help us solve this problem. I would really appreciate. Honorable Speaker, there is a democratic space that we are lacking in this country. And the laws of this country are very clear. Give people space to talk, to picket, to demonstrate, and to even give statements of what they need for themselves. This is a democratic country. Police brutality should stop. Reverend Njoya was beaten in front of this parliament, I don't know like what, in 1996, I think. And in 2024, the same thing is happening. When is this going to stop? The IG should resign. That is point number one. On corruption, EACC, Honorable Speaker, if you report something today to EACC, after 1 hour, somebody will call you from Marsabit and say, oh, did you go to EACC? What did you report there? How would this person know? 500 kilometers from Marsabit. It's definitely somebody who is in that office leaking that information. If you ask me today, it should be disbanded like yesterday, not today. Honorable Speaker, we are seeking solutions here. And this is what Jay-Z wants. That is what they're asking for. We stop our excesses. What is wrong if the president today says, ministers, why don't you sack them? Let them go home. There are other people, Kenyans, who can do the same job effectively and efficiently. Futa wakasi, sack them. The other day you heard about fertilizers. That man is still in office. Cooking oil. The CS is still in office. And the president is aware. And the CEO of Kenya National Trading Corporation said, why do you ask me these questions? My seniors are the people who sent those to my office. Who are these seniors? The president should sack all the ministers, employ afresh ones, and we move forward. On the borrowings, Honorable Speaker, if you look at President Moi's budget in 2007 was 2.18 billion shillings. The expenditure was 324 billion. Similarly, President in 2012, the budget was at 1.52 trillion. And today, our budget is at 3.9 trillion shillings. Honorable Speaker, we have a problem. Our problem are not taxes that is being paid. Our problem is we live beyond our means. We have thieves as ministers. We have thieves as PSS. We have thieves as MPs. We have thieves as senators. Honorable Speaker, let's not spare this house also. We have a problem. We must start from this house. We must start from this house. Everybody knows how much we are earning. Even in this house, there are people who live extravagantly in this house, and we know who they are. Honorable Speaker, there are issues about counties. There are devolved functions that have not been transferred up to today. Why do we need regional offices, regional bodies doing some work that's supposed to be done by the counties? Do you know the reason? Because of corruption. Yes, that is what is happening. You create regional offices, and then yet, constitutionally, those issues are supposed to be in the counties. They are devolved. Why do you keep the money here? I want to ask our president, if he really loves this country, let him follow our constitution. Let him send counties. Even CDF money should go to the counties. This is not MP's business. It should go to the counties, managed by the counties. We have regional offices, even in Marsabit. We have regional offices in Isiolo. We have one operating from Garissa. So many offices. These are conduits of theft. Honorable Speaker, and I really appreciate what our majority leader has done today. He has opened the free space for us to talk. And you remember, our Deputy President said, there are some people who have eaten so much, they start vomiting on us. That is very true. Very, very true. I want to urge our President, this is the right time, the right opportunity for you. Don't wait for these young boys and girls to come and talk to you. I've asked for, please start by, first of all, sacking all the ministers. Futa yote, PSS, regional offices, take it back to the counties. And the president should support the county government. And Honorable Speaker, the county government also should stop its excesses. What I would urge this House to do is to visit counties so that we the employment programs and the development programs. And then we come up with a law that will curtail theft in those counties. About 2 months ago, your Honorable Speaker, Governor for Marsabit was brought before EACC. And 2 months since then, they are bragging around Nairobi area saying, kwani EACC ko, what can be done to us? There is nothing that can be done. Oh, we are dying. We sit in his helicopter, we take photos with him. Who will touch us? I want to ask the president, please, don't dine. Don't sit with thieves. Fukuzawa, chase them away. When you are seen with the president, oh, you think like now there is no case against you. There is a case against you. And I want to urge ODPP also to, in fact, it should be disbanded. There's nothing they are doing. Like I think Honorable Khalwale has said, they select who to prosecute, who to take to court, and who not to take to court, depending on which party you come from or where you come from. And that's very serious, Honorable Speaker. I want to today thank God, Jesus, for creating this space for us to talk what we want. Honorable Speaker, there is the issue of cooking oil, imported cooking oil. It is in almost 50 godowns today, expiring, and the government has lost over 17 billion shillings. And those people are still in the office because they are politically correct. I want to urge the president, please, even if somebody is politically correct, you are trying to help a certain region, please stop doing that. Do your work, sack all of them. Because, Honorable Speaker, I want to ask our majority leader and minority leader to think about what we are going to do in order to handle issues in the county governments. Because the problem starts with the counties. Every Gen Z comes from a county. Honorable Speaker, if you go to a county, your county today, you will find foreigners, people from I don't know where, work in those counties. If these JCs are allowed to work in their counties, do you think we have this kind of a problem? No, we don't have. But they cannot work. Only the family, close relatives, given those contracts. And don't you think the president is not aware? He's aware. We normally send him texts telling him this and this is happening in our counties. So he should take charge. The monies that are going to the counties are the monies that are from taxpayers' money. They are not, that doesn't belong to the counties. No, it doesn't belong to the governor. The governor sits in Nairobi and then controls monies in either Wajir, Marsabit, Isiolo, Samburu. Why is this happening? What business do you have in Nairobi? It's because you just went there as a governor to steal, but not to work for them. Finally, Honorable Speaker, what I want to see from the president, the governors who has cases, who are now being questioned, he should ask them to step aside. And thorough investigation should be started. Honorable Speaker, this House, Senate House, our business mainly is county business. And it is constitutionally mandated to look into any business that are being handled in the counties. Are we doing that? No. Not the way we are supposed to do. I will ask these distinguished senators, take time. Let's sit and have a discussion on how to tackle the most problematic counties, starting from the bottom, going up. We can have committees, special committees. Send one to Marsabit, send the other one to Kakamega, send another one to Isiolo, another one to Mandera. Then you will solve these problems. Even Machakos. So, Honorable Speaker, under Article 75, conduct of a state officer. It says a state officer shall behave whether in public and official life, in private life, or in association with any person, in a manner that avoids gifts. We have a judge there. Donations. And today, Honorable Speaker, what I would request us to do, there is an organizations which are like, let's say, for example, Kena, Kera, Kura. If you go there today, those director generals are supposed to be asked to step aside so that lifestyle audit can be instituted. Honorable Speaker, if you go to any office today, either government or you will be told, if you want to ask for contracts or employment for your people, you will be told, sorry, we don't have. Because it has started from somewhere in the State House. There are some brokers working in the State House that normally go to places and say, we need employment for our people. And the president said, employ 500. And it's not true. KRA before us, they employed 56% of one community. And do you think the president is aware? No. Even some CEOs working in institutions are worried. They are being forced to do things that they are not supposed to do. And this one has been sent by so-and-so, you must do this, you must buy this, you must sell this. They have a problem. And the only person who can solve this problem is for the president to do a memo to all CEOs and director generals to tell them, listen, don't listen to anybody who uses my name. He must have a memo and publicized. We need to see that memo also, that the president has 1 minute only, please. 1 minute. I want to finalize. I want to conclude.
We're running out of time. 1 minute.
So, if we have that kind of a memo, I'm sure these thieves will stop stealing from our people. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, I want to thank the members here. Last week, Wednesday, we almost went on adjournment. And I want to thank the 19 senators who said we should not go, including myself. And today, our majority leader has seen the fruit of us saying no. And I want to thank both the leader of majority and minority for bringing this issue today before the public, before the people of Kenya, and before the Senate. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Beatrice Ogola.
Thank you,